We could win this war.
We can win this war?
Okay, well, joining us from Orlando, Florida, is the man in that clip, Anthony Dream Johnson, who says he wants to abolish feminism and make women great again.
No, but it also says, with a trademark, make women great again. Fool, we're always great.
Make women great again.
But they're going to do a 3-day seminar for women led by all men.
In mansplaining news, a 3-day conference for women led by men hopes to make women great again.
How the 22 convention will make you the greatest you ever. Raise your femininity by 500%.
First of all, how is a man supposed to tell a woman how to be the ultimate woman?
But women need to be taught how to be great again. Not my words.
We do.
Like how to land a husband, how to lose weight, how to pop out a bunch of kids.
Why do men think they need to fix the problems of women?
Well, it says the world's ultimate event for women.
Yeah, Orlando, Florida, that's going to be the scene of the crime. It's mansplaining palooza, and say no to the toxic bullying feminist dogma.
Taught by men to make women great again.
Taking the stage now is the founder of the 22 convention. You're in for a treat, Mr. Anthony Dream Johnson.
Anthony Dream Johnson.
Anthony Dream Johnson.
The first president of the manosphere.
It's run by all men, which promises to, quote, make women great again. This course is guaranteed to raise your femininity by 500%.
Together, we will make women great again. Excuse me, I'm mansplaining here. She said there's nothing radical.
Welcome to the inaugural Red Man Group for the 22 convention, the very first one. The year is 2020. A lot of things happened in 2020, and for me, this is the most exciting thing this year. We have a great panel of experts, opinions, expert opinions, and first guy on the panel, I'd just like you to introduce yourself.
My name is Pat Stedman, and I'm a dating and relationship coach for men.
I'm Socrates, and I am a dating coach, mentor, and a strong advocate for father and fathering.
I am Anthony Dream Johnson, first president of the Manosphere and founder of 21 Studios and the 21 Convention and 22 Convention.
And I'm George Bruno, the moderator of this panel.
I'm Jennifer Molesky, and I have a YouTube channel where I mainly talk about self-responsibility. I just want everyone to be fulfilled within themselves.
I'm Coach Greg Adams, author of The Free Agent Lifestyle and De-Evolution. The links are in the description box below.
I'm Michael Foster, and I'm a pastor.
What I want to talk about first, number one, this is a new event here, in the same way that the Patriarch Convention last year was a new event and a risk. You never know when you do something new. You just never know how things are going to be received by people. And Anthony, I have to say that it started out very controversial. The phrase, and I'm going to start with you, was make women great again, which is probably the most triggering phrase of 2020. Tell us about the origin of that before we actually start with the reactions to the convention.
And you were there when we first unveiled it, I think, in 2018, right? Yeah, I love that moment, man. You could see it on my face, too, in the video and the speech when I put it on. So Make Women Great Again actually came from two people. Actually, Stefan Molyneux, actually, I think was the first one ever made a video on it. He had a video before he was nuked from YouTube this year. And it was called Make Women Great Again, but it was about like voting and politics and stuff. It wasn't like what we're doing now, but I'd seen that. And then I saw Richard Nicolai, a good friend of mine, an alumni speaker of this convention, the 21 Convention for Men, several times over. And he had made a gag hat that was very similar to Make Women Great Again. It said Make Women Great Again, but it was layered in 4 tiers. It didn't have the style of this, which is part of what makes it very triggering, because it looks like a MAGA hat, but it's not. It's Make Women Great Again. Anyway, I saw him post that randomly on Facebook, or a friend of his, this girl he made it for, in 2018, right before the 2018 21 Convention, which was huge that year. Over 200 people came out. It was huge. Anyway, I saw that late at night, 2 in the morning. We're exhausted. The event's about to start. My staff had just flown in from around the country and stuff for the event. Camera guys, event staff and stuff. And I saw it on Facebook from him and that girl, 2 in the morning. I just fell in love immediately. I knew, my gut was like, this is going to be fucking huge. In 2018, you're in the middle of Trump's first term. The country's still getting, even now in 2020, they still haven't accepted him as president, right? All the fake news crap. But I just knew immediately when I saw it, I was like, if I turn that into a better hat immediately and do something with it, I saw a vision for it. Like I could see almost into the future with it. So I rush ordered it the next day. I was yelling at my guys, keeping them up till 3 in the morning. Gotta make the hat, gotta make the hat. It's gonna be fucking amazing. They'll tell you the story. I was livid with excitement for it. And very much, I guess I was seeing what would happen with it if we put it together into a speech and then to a conference someday. And I also figured out pretty quickly, because I wove it into my speech that year, the future is still masculine. That was my keynote at the 2018 21 convention. I knew it was going to provide, I could sense it was going to provide the foundation for the 22 convention, which I had thought of in 2015, a playoff of 21 for a conference for women. But I didn't start it for a couple reasons, and one of the main ones that lacked a fundamental thrust of intellectual foundation and direction to take with it. And we could have just done it anyway, self-improvement for women, but I don't like doing generic stuff. I like doing epic, badass, legendary shit. So it all kind of came together, and I announced it in my speech, and the men went nuts. You can see the video. Everyone's hooping and hollering, as Jesse might say. And so the men were very supportive when I said that and put the hat on for the first time ever on camera, which eventually ended up on mainstream news and all the stuff this year. So that's kind of the origin, and I would have done it in 2019, but I focused first on the patriarch event, like you mentioned. I had that idea from Hunter, Drew, and Tanner, who had talked to me. Hunter had talked to me about it. So that's why we didn't do it in 2019. I put the focus on patriarch and on Poland, so international event last year. And I knew that in 2020 we could do, Make Women Great Again. And when we launched it, it just went viral. I mean, I've never seen anything like that in my life personally. It's got to be one of the most successful viral marketing campaigns in internet history, recently anyway, and in the manosphere by far. Reached 150 million people.
150 million people.
Yep. That's it. Boom.
Yeah. What do they say? Marketing is what you pay for. Publicity is what you pray for.
Yeah.
And wow, you proved that.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk to the world's foremost expert in hypergamy. I say that jokingly. Mr. Pat Stedman, what is your impression of the weekend of Make Women Great Again? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I thought it was an incredible event, and it really exceeded even like my biggest expectations for it. You had a really, really good audience that I think was pretty open-minded, and I liked how they engaged. I mean, it wasn't like they just accepted everything. There was some tension at points, and I thought a lot of questions were really good, and I feel like it was a good part to like create a dialogue, which I think we really need. And so there's a lot of women who came into the room who were much more sort of aligned with our thinking, and others who I really applaud them for having the curiosity to come here and, well, let's hear what they have to say. And I think that everybody came out of it really, with their consciousness raised. I mean, this is as we talked about in, the other Red Man group, 21 convention one, I mean, this is a very big threat. This sort of radical, this feminist ideology is a threat to families. It's a threat to relationships. I mean, as a relationship coach, as a dating coach, I just see how it's ruining people's happiness. Like, men and women are having a really, really hard time getting together and connecting because of all this garbage that's making them hate each other. And so I think, if we want a healthy society, we want happy relationships, we want babies, right? This is a really, really important step in the right direction. And I don't think anyone's ever done anything like this before. So I'm very, very positive about it.
Yeah. It was kind of interesting because I didn't see any blue hair here.
Yay!
Which is a step in the right direction. We did take a risk because you never know how these things are going to go. You do something like this and it has the potential of blowing up in your face. And you did receive a lot of crap.
A lot of nasty women, violence, threats. They threatened to bomb the event. they wanted us to get shot, like a mass shooting. I mean, the shit that actually came in through Reddit, Facebook, and Twitter was really nasty.
Yeah.
And I got used to last year. I had a lot of that from the inner manosphere, some toxic crap there.
Yeah.
But it was substantially larger than that. I mean, it was thousands, and it wasn't just to me. It was the speakers. You guys were getting your inboxes flooded. It was everywhere.
Were there other men doing the threats? Like, were there manosphere guys, men's community guys that were against this?
They were. I didn't get any threats from them that I know of for this event, but they were very annoyed by it. They were very pessimistic about it. You can't make women great again. Women aren't going to respond to any sort of dialogue or logic. It's all just absolute bullshit. Not that other elements of persuasion are unimportant, emotional and physical and being there in the presence. Up here, this is a performance too. It's not just some intellectual, this isn't like writing in a book. This is, that's something too, but this is a whole performance up here. You see someone's face, you see how they move, you see what's going on, the lighting, the audience, the engagement, the eye contact, the physicality of it. So yeah, there was some pushback there on the manosphere, but those guys are all losers and nobody cares about them anymore.
Socrates, your impression of this weekend and your impression of when it was initially conceived.
Oh, boy. The initial conception, let's start with that. I was faced, I guess, with a second occurrence in my life, is that, you talk about history repeating itself, or similarities of history. Over a decade ago, literally in this hotel, there was an opportunity to be part of a function, an under 21 convention by a very, very young punk who just had more drive than anybody was comfortable with, and no was simply not an answer, and he was going to not accept failure. He was going to will it in existence. He literally created reality, and he did. And more than a decade later, we're discussing the need to have a conversation with women, the need for men to speak up in an organized way about the changes taking place in our culture and take ownership of that and have that discussion. And I also realized that conversation was highly threatening. It was verboten. There will be consequences, which I think, in all honesty and sincerity, while we may not have had a bomb threat or an assault today or this weekend, I don't think the ramifications are over. I think it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the public sector once the video is released. And in very direct ways, I know I've been threatened, my family's been threatened, my 4-year-old daughter has been essentially threatened with sexual assault. Because of a position, I dare say, to hold women accountable to what they say. I find that incredibly vile. So that this time I backed the winning horse, despite all opposition and rationality to say, no, not me, not my family, not my job, not my child. And I sit here today being very, very proud of the man to my left.
Nice.
How did the weekend, here we are, how did the weekend go? We're at the end of this event. What do you think?
I think it was a rare gift. I think there was some exchanges. I know I was the first one up. I didn't know if I was going to get rocks or panties thrown at me. I know I was hoping for one, not the latter. But it was an opportunity for me to, for the first time, have women hear what a man has to say in an honest, sincere way. The second was I was able to hear women firsthand, their stories of how they were sold a bill of goods and how they've been hurt and damaged and how it's affected their lives, and the emotional impact of hearing those stories firsthand, looking at the person's eye and having that exchange is not something you find on YouTube or read in a book, and I find that terribly, terribly impactful. This can't stop, and so I'm very optimistic about the steps we're taking. I think they're long overdue. And I think it's just been a tremendous weekend and event, and I am absolutely looking forward to being part of this again in the next round.
I told more than a couple women this weekend, the attendees, that your voice is important, that we're not here to preach at anybody, we're here to create a dialogue. And even though there was a lot of, I don't think it was so much bravado. I know you took a big risk with the words that you used in promoting this. And some people took offense at the words, and I think what's going to happen is some of the fallout of the attendees on social media is going to soften some of that, because this is not what it initially appeared it was going to be. It wasn't a bunch of men telling women to make us sandwiches.
Yeah. I kind of did that in my talk.
Yeah. Make sandwiches great again.
Sandwiches, babies, and cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I make. Yeah.
But everybody's voice is important. And I think everyone has a role in speaking, everyone has a role in listening. I think that. And that leads us to Jennifer Molesky. What do you think of the weekend?
I liked it. I'm really honored to have been chosen to speak here. I really believe what I say. And it's interesting because I've been saying to people, I feel like there's one thought of red pill is that it's a red pill and it is given, and if you don't do with the information what we tell you to do, then you're an idiot. And then there's just, here's some information, and you have your own unique life. Go do with it what you will, unique human. And that's what I found with all the speakers. It was just a lot of different people saying, here's information, here's what I think would behoove you, here's a suggestion, but go, unique one. And it was really, it was awesome.
Yeah, there's no purity test for the red pill or for the manosphere. It's not like everyone has to recite a common creed. Every single person on this panel is different. Everyone has different content, but we come together and create an event.
Well, is it a brand or a truth? Can you brand a truth? Intellectual property rights would say no, I don't think, but, and that's kind of how I see it. If you want to brand it, fine, but then it doesn't become truth anymore. An axiom can't be owned by anyone. But I'm a woman, so I'm not sure. I could be wrong.
Coach Greg Adams, you are new to this organization. You had the pleasure of coming when we had 3 events under the same roof. Your thoughts, please.
Well, I believe the time is overdue for us to look at the measurements of feminism and be able to evaluate it without being silenced. And Anthony provided the opportunity to do so. And you had several women that came out. They exhibited a lot of courage to sit here and listen to men give their perspective finally without shame, ridicule, emotional responses. They all were there to hear a logical presentation about it. So they exhibited a lot of courage, but I think a lot of the speakers weren't just speaking to the attendees. They were speaking to the audience that is going to watch this after the videos were published. Overwhelmingly, I thought the support was there. After my presentation, people came to me after the fact and said that they appreciated what we were talking about. A lot of people that have been through generations in America that have seen what I call the death, debt, and destruction as a result of feminism. And I'm hoping that those individuals who chose to attend will be willing to talk to the Generation Z, the alpha generation that follows them, to give them an opportunity to not experience the decrease in the birth rate, the divorce rate, the lack of marital rate that we have going on in this country. And of course, I talk about in my book, The Evolution, the barbarian is now at the gate. What are we going to do? So right now, we had an opportunity to provide our feedback, and I think now more men will have courage to be able to speak about these issues.
I like that. Mr. Michael Foster, Pastor Foster. I've known you for a couple years virtually on Twitter. We both spoke at a conference last year, about a year ago, another men's conference. And I've watched you speak the truth to the world on Twitter. I've watched you get rocks thrown at you.
I was really quick, man. Bob, weave, duck. It was fine.
And I thought to myself, I wonder if Michael Foster would be appropriate for the 21 convention. I thought to myself, is he too Christian for this? But I saw that the truth that he talked about is applicable to everybody. And I always say that the truth is offensive before it's effective. Give me your perspective of this weekend as a first-time speaker.
Sure. So destroying feminism or exposing feminism for the lie that it is and the destruction it causes is part of the common good, right? So if you're in a neighborhood and everyone has their own houses, they have their own ideas and their own families, and there's poison going into your water supply, you all have a vested interest in stopping that, right? So we all have a vested interest in watching our daughters not be destroyed by feminism, but be allowed to be what God made them, which is women, right? And men be men. So my perspective is very simple, is that on the sixth day, God created man. In his image he created them. Male and female, he created them, right? So mankind is equal in worth and value, but exists in two different varieties, male, female. And then he says, it is good. So it's good to be a man. It's good to be a woman. It's not good for a woman to pretend to be a man or a man to pretend to be a woman. And so as part of the common good, I can be on this stage with you guys. We're at the very least co-belligerents in trying to take down something that is hurting people, right? Feminism isn't pro-woman. They keep telling women to be men, and they're bad at it, right? My perspective is that there's good work being done here. There's a lot of people, we all disagree about things. That's the beauty of it. We can argue about it. We're not trying to water things down, but at the same time, what we agree about is this is bad. This is bad for society, it's bad for culture, and more than anything, it is bad for women.
I like that. Let's go right back to Mr. Pat Stedman. Is marriage important?
I think it's essential. I mean, I don't know how you build a society without it. And I'm a pretty nuanced guy. I mean, people who saw my talk, like, I try to understand and very empathize with some of the situations that were in society that maybe laid the foundation for feminism to come in. I try to acknowledge legitimate grievances. But I mean, as I've gone and been a dating coach and I've seen what's been going on out there. I mean, early on there was this thing about pickup and trying to meet girls, and I think that guys go through this process. Some guys need to go through it longer than others, but eventually you come to this point, and it's like almost universal with the guys I work with, which is that they really just want to find a great woman, and they want to start a family, and they burn themselves out a little bit of just the pickup culture. And even when they're still in it, there's this sort of sense like, it's because these are the only women I can see out there, women who are just, putting themselves out, being very, very promiscuous, and they get jaded. And it's not good for society because women don't like doing that. I know from talking to women, they're very frustrated with dating too. They want to find a great guy. A lot of them, they want to start families too. But this wedge that feminism's created between the sexes, it really makes it so that neither of them can get what they want, which is to form stable partnerships that are really meaningful and that they can build a future from. And if you don't have marriage, you just can't have a society, because then if you're gonna have less children, but then even the children you have are going to have terrible outcomes. And we just see that the data on this is so clear at this point. Men and women need to work together to fix society. We can't just do it one of us. And I think this is why the 22 Convention was so important, because we need to get women on board with a true equality and really together, both sexes, building a better future.
Notice I'm asking married men, is marriage important? And if they have a spouse in the audience, they better give the right answer. Socrates, is marriage important?
It's fundamental to any healthy society, any healthy civilization. It is going to be the foundation upon which that society is built. To that effect, we also can sit down and say across all time, all generations, all continents, cultures, marriage is the most streamlined, efficient method of social governance. It's essentially two people choosing to create life and create children and to raise those children and to transcend and educate their social values through their offsprings. And it's a continuation of their particular genetic lines in the species and the society. It needs to go on. So it's critical there. And I think if you look at the state of any culture and look at marriage and how it's regarded, how equitable that institution is, it will tell you a tremendous amount about the health and vitality of that society and culture.
Anthony, you're a young single man dating, meeting women on a regular basis, attracting women on a regular basis. Is marriage important?
Extremely so. Like they're saying, I agree completely that it's necessary for civilization, and without it, it's not going to last. The West will die, and we'll enter what comes after the West if it falls from the collapse of families and marriages and things, as we're seeing, along with the collapse of gender relations, would be like the next dark age. So I'd prefer that to not happen. I'd prefer we have a renewal and a new enlightenment, a masculine enlightenment, like I talked about in my speech, a masculine rebirth, a feminine rebirth, which I think is basically what we're seeing with the manosphere. I will diverge a little bit, though, in that and I have been for several years now, since about 2012, I've been very opposed to government involvement in marriage. I think the government has done nothing but fuck up marriage since it got involved, and it's been particularly bad since the 1980s when Reagan made no-fault divorce like a nationwide thing. And we're seeing that go off the rails now with alimony and child support and all this divorce, all the whole divorce. In the manosphere, we call it divorce rape or divorce rape culture, and that's very real. It's unhealthy and it's toxic, and government is fundamental to this. It's not just feminists and feminism and all this. Government is the tool and the method that they use, the hammer they use to do this. Government is a big problem in marriage, and government needs to get out. Marriage is important, but it should be a private religious ceremony. And I'm saying that as an atheist. So if you're not religious, it would not be religious in that case, but most people are, to my knowledge. So it would be a private religious ceremony, which I did on my own years ago, back in 2014. And that's what I'll do again at some point in the future when I'm building a family, when I find a good baby mama. So between now and then, I'm single, though. But yeah, government and marriage, big fucking no-no. And like I talked about with Paul Elam, it does nothing but cause problems. Not only in terms of risk management for men, but also it gives women today, because the government has been weaponized against men in this way, it gives women an unhealthy imbalance of power in their direction, which even if nothing ever happens, you're just putting a bunch of, like Judgy Bitch, this blogger, great blogger chick, Socrates knows her too. She said once that if she was given a choice early on in the full facts, she would not have gotten legally married to her husband, but would have still built a life with him. Because she said basically getting married as a woman, to a man, it's like someone's giving you a loaded gun, pointing it at your husband's head, and they're like, don't pull the trigger for the next 40 years. It's better just not have the fucking gun. So yeah, government involvement in marriage is a big problem. They need to get out. And Congressman Ron Paul, former congressman, was a big advocate of this, so is Senator Rand Paul currently. And I think a few other politicians currently are interested in this. And
And it's also a form of absolute.
Yeah.
And absolute power corrupts absolute.
Yeah. Yep. If I can interject, Socrates taught me once about crazy women. There's plenty of them out there, right? BP chicks and stuff, whatnot. And he told me that, he said maybe in his speech and told me directly that if the vampire can only come into your home if you invite the vampire in. And he was referring more specifically to crazy women, bringing them into your life, and the problems that comes with, right, as a man. But I view it also in terms of government inviting it into your home. You need to keep the government out of your home unless it's an absolute emergency. Domestic violence, things like that. Otherwise, keep the shit out of your home. Marriage is an obvious one. You don't need the government to have a wedding. You have a wedding. You can trade rings. You can trade last names. They can legally take your last name. There's a lot you can do on your own without government officiating it and getting involved and tipping the balance of power in a woman's direction, which she doesn't want anyway. She wants to be submissive and be your woman. The government is a big fucking problem with this, or a big lopsided problem with it.
I recently announced to my audience on YouTube and social media that I'm open to marriage for the first time in 17 years after a divorce. And the comments have been very interesting. Everything from, rot's a ruck, to I wouldn't get married as long as the government has anything to do with it. And all I said was that I'm open to marriage. And if it doesn't happen, then that's fine. I have no problem. I've lived successfully for 17 years. But people feel very, very strongly about the issue. I think marriage is important. Many people said, I would do it, but I wouldn't do it through the government. Same thing. Same thing. Jennifer Molesky, is marriage important?
Yes, maybe this would be a good time. We're talking about relationships and whatnot. The government, what did you say? The government should stay out of this?
Completely out of marriage, yeah. Huge advocate of that.
I think the government should stay out of everything.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
That's just me. I'm very much about volunteerism. I'm an anarchist within. I believe in no ruler, certainly not the government. But that's not the question. I just want to convert everyone into anarchists, but that's not going to happen. I do think that government is, I do think that marriage is important. Yeah, it's an agreement. And if we can't come to terms with what we're doing, then we can't come to terms. So I don't mind what you said about, even having it a spiritual ceremony. It's fine. But I think to declare love in front of other people and declare your intent and promise in front of other people. And I think a small community, now I'm going to get into how I think weddings should go. I think that you should have a small community that does hold you accountable, a trustworthy community that can mentor you through that, but also, I'm just being repetitive now, to hold you accountable. Yes, I believe in marriage, however you want to do it, but I don't believe in government. That's it.
Okay. Now, this is where we're going to take a turn when we go to Coach Greg Adams. I know Coach has a different opinion, and I don't disagree with him at all. And I told him, too, that he is an important voice in this world. Coach, Greg Adams, is marriage important?
I think many people will be surprised by my answer on this one. I mean, if you've been following me for a long time, you know about the free agent lifestyle tenets, which is no cohabitation, no long-term relationships, and no marriage. Now, before I say that, I believe marriage is about a lot of things, but at least these two things: building families and building community. Now, can you say that either exists very well right now? There's not a lot of communities. Not many people know their neighbors. Families have been destroyed. Now, when it comes to men, I believe men overwhelmingly want to be married. I've been married. I wish I had a successful marriage. Many men that have been divorced wish they had a successful marriage. And many men in here, I know, when we did the patriarch talk, they wanted children. They wanted marriages. Now, when I say the 3 tenets of the free agent lifestyle, I say that for 2 reasons. Namely, people brought it up already, the government. Their involvement has destroyed the institution of marriage. They don't give many couples options, and they interfere. I try to advise men of what they can anticipate if they decide to be married. And that therefore, if they don't do their due diligence and they rely on the media to sell them marriage, which they say it's about love, well, then what's going to happen is he's going to find out the hard way that there are judges, mediators, lawyers, child support offices, child protective services, court county clerks, a lot of people that are involved in the institution of marriage, which benefits the court if your family is destroyed. So I say those three tenets as a means to have a silent protest until there's marriage reform. And if there is marriage reform, then we can say, let's be about family and community again. Until then, I tell men, you really have to do your homework, not only with the woman that you want to be involved with, but what the family law codes are associated with. If you are one of the 60% of first divorces, 70% of second marriages dissolving, and almost 80% of third marriages dissolving, with 8 out of 10 of them being women initiating them. So is the woman important here? Is your selection of that woman important? Well, she will dictate whether she will lead you to the slaughter. Until then, I say no to marriage until we resolve the issue.
I looked up the definition of keeping it real, and there was a picture of Coach Greg Adams.
Yep.
There's a lot of people who, when you're talking, they're going, la, 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 I'm not listening to you, la, 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 I'm getting married no matter what. And they want to drown you out.
Sure.
And I'm glad you are here adding some balance to things because you're not lying.
Very few people call me a liar, okay? So a lot of people call me a lot of things. They say you're bitter, you're hurt, you failed at your relationship, although there's 1 million divorces per year, okay, per year in this country. But the one thing that will keep me talking is the fact that people never call me a liar, okay? And when people start calling me a liar, then I will have to find solutions to adjust my message. But the truth is the truth, whether you like it or not. I advise men to not live by the hope strategy because hope is not a strategy. You can't hope, wish, anything. You have to know, and not only know, you have to accept. If you want to accept the data, you accept it for what it is.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
Absolutely not.
Which leads us to Pastor Michael Foster. Is marriage important?
In the spirit of the coach here, all right, I'll give you an answer you're probably not going to expect, okay? You should probably not get married if your definition of marriage is finding someone that completes you and makes you happy, and it's this romantic idea. That idea of marriage isn't biblical. It's not historical. That's a product of romanticism and a lot of changes that have happened slowly over the last couple centuries, right? I love my wife. I miss her. I can't wait to get home to where I'm dying to get back. She doesn't complete me. She's not my soulmate, and she doesn't exist to make me happy, right? And I don't exist to make her happy. In people's marriage, they find out that when you put two people together in an enterprise that is a household and raising children, that you don't always see eye to eye, and it's difficult. And the person who you thought was going to complete you and make you happy is actually a source of conflict and trouble, right? And that leads marriages in a bad place. Put all the calculating stats and risk adjustment and all that aside for a moment and just say the way we think about marriage is wrong, and that needs to change too. Right? And you want to find people that have that same view, a woman that thinks of marriage in the same way that you do. And the old Westminster Standards, which is big for Presbyterians, gives 3 purposes for marriage, right? Which is helpful companionship, propagation of a godly seed, having kids, and protection against sexual immorality, or to enjoy each other sexually. That's the purpose of marriage, not to complete you.
Well, you're the guy who has a very high notch count with the same woman.
Yeah, that's right. Well, here's the truth. I'm happy. Married people.
You don't feel like you're
happy.
missing out?
No, I'm not missing out, and I'm not here to. I'm not here so much to criticize people as I am to tell you that there are happy married people. Been happy for a long time. I miss my wife. I can't wait to get back to her. That might be blue pill. I think I can kill a lot of you with my bare hands. You know what? So what? Come on. I love being married, and it's great. It's a gift from God. It's a bad time. So we do have to tell men the truth that getting married is like a boat that's going through a bay that's got a lot of jagged rocks in it. Right? There's a lot of ways to get damaged. But this has happened before. After the Reformation, a lot of people were scared of getting married. Law was all jacked up. That's where our marriage ceremonies come from. People are like, these guys would say, hey, let's get hitched. And they go out and have sex in the haystacks. They called them haystack marriages. And that's when they started saying, hey, we should probably have public witnesses. Because this woman's like, hey, he said we were getting married before we had sex. And now he says we're not. And so we've had marriage reformed before. And we absolutely need it again, but it starts with changing what you think marriage is about. I think it's about creating a household for the glory of God, a productive home where children are raised. And it's amazing how arranged marriages work, right? They work for a reason because their definition of marriage is different than Americans. You know, Americans are self-absorbed narcissists, and that's got to change, right? And then marriage will be important for more people, not just for married men with a high notch count.
Excellent.
Yeah, I want to. I actually wanted to jump in anyway. I was getting some water, but one of the things that I found it's like so incredible about marriage is the alchemy within it. And if you want to grow as an individual, there's nothing that helps you to see yourself. It's like having a mirror put up to you. And so I really, really strongly believe in that. And I think that there's really, obviously the laws need reform at the very least. I don't really have an opinion based on whether or not the government should be involved in it or not. My wife, we had to use the government to get her over here because she was an immigrant. So I have, I don't know how that would work under a non-government system. But well, then it's open borders then. So anyway, but I mean, within a marriage, just like the transformational power of being with somebody who like people talk about with dating, like, oh, you can get girls, etc. It's like the test on your frame, your test as a man, like to be a man, is like 10x'd in a marriage because she can always see. Like she gets very aware of you, and she can see when you're off point. And so, as a man, you don't have just the opportunity to maybe fake it for a situation. You have to really internalize it. So anyway, I think that people have to again go through their process, and not if you're not ready for a marriage, right? If you're not mature enough to get involved with that and understand what you're getting into, and certainly if you're blind to the risks. Because there are serious risks, especially with the legal structure, you shouldn't do it. But I do think also as a man, some of the things that are scary about getting inside of a marriage are things that are actually really important for your growth.
George, can I make another point?
Please.
We haven't discussed this. We talked about family, but the children that are produced from marriages or produced from non-marriages, baby mama style, right? These children are exposed to a lot more dangers via divorce and the baby mom syndrome, single motherhood. Okay, these kids are at risk for being criminals, highly likely to go to prison, more than 2 kids raised in 2-parent households. You got to think, the only alternative to raising families is either have that kid stay with one parent or have them in a co-parent relationship, right? Where the kid lives in a backpack from the point of origin. Now, I don't know about you guys out there, anyone here listening, would you like to live in a suitcase or a backpack for your entire childhood? Think about this. Week to week, you go back and forth from one parent to the other. There's two set of rules, two castles. This is not healthy. We think about each other, oh, I would love to love someone, complete, all of the things that we talked about. Not many people talked about what children actually experience as a result of this. And now these children become the future leaders. What are their relationships going to look like? They're out there doing monkey double backflips on the carousel, and we know it. Look at the WAP culture and et cetera. They know nothing about family, and not to mention people that are raised in single-parent households who attempt marriage are failures at it overwhelmingly. I believe it's like 70 or 80% of people from single-parent households who get married are divorced because they don't know what it is about. It is about the children, and we get too selfish, and we misunderstand what it's about. It's about family. It's about the children. We need to keep that in perspective when we look at the options that we have with them.
Let's pivot here. How does a woman find a husband, attract a husband, create a husband? How does that happen? Nuts and bolts. Pat.
Well, I think that the first things, the sort of basics of being in shape, it seems kind of silly to hammer this point home, but, as Anthony's pointed out, you can't really say that women in America overall are in particularly good shape. And, and the men, a lot of the men aren't either, but this goes for men and women. If you're out of shape, like your dating prospects are really, really low. And I've even talked to this with some guys who, were interested in working with me. And I'm like, one of the things I ask guys, I'm like, well, describe yourself to me physically. And, you don't have to be like in perfect shape or anything, but when you have some guys like I'm 300 pounds and it's like, well, go work with a personal trainer and get in shape before we start this process because you're just playing the game on hard unnecessarily. And I think this is particularly the case for women because they have some less variables to attract attention from themselves. A 300-pound guy could be like a millionaire and he could have he could be very loud or whatever and compensate for things. So that's the first point. I also think it's really important to have like healthy communities of women who have similar values, want the same sort of thing as you, and who will help to amplify our femininity. A lot of women today spend time, I think, part of this is the product of having some really stressful work, and I empathize with that. We always have to deal with, the context of an individual's experience. But a lot of women today are not really brought up in circles that encourage them to be feminine or attractive to guys. So I think that, women who come to events like this and connect with women who are interested in having healthy relationships and being, attractive to men, that's a really important step because as that energy builds and they simply put themselves out there into the world, men are going to be drawn to them, especially because there really is like not a lot of competition. If you go, we've talked a little bit about Poland, for instance, where a lot of the women there are in overall quite good shape and they're feminine and, there is actually there's more competition between girls there. Whereas in America, like when a girl does even these basic things, guys are like mesmerized. Because there's just not a lot of that. So, those are the things that I would start with. I think it's really important to surround yourself with communities, though, because people in general, but I think especially women, really become products of their circles. And so if you're out with, if you have some friends who are really just sort of loud and get drunk all the time and, basically are promiscuous and sort of, I would say, more importantly here, are just like unconscious. like they're just sort of going through the motions and they're not thinking about anything they're doing, I would get new friends, because those girls are gonna rub off on you. And there are women who care about this stuff, who really care about like having these healthy relationships and dating like good men. So,
you know, I used to teach a course on the psychology of career development, and job seekers would say there's no good jobs out there. Employers would say there's no good candidates out there. And they're all looking in the wrong places. And then, of course, apps started being developed that would bring people with talents and skills together with employers. There's men that say there's no good women out there. There's women that are saying there's no good men out there. How does a woman find a man, Socrates?
You've got to go look. You got to believe in the possibility. Again, you know, I think Pat was touching on it as well. The pond you fish in determines the fish you're going to catch, particularly with men. You know, I give this guy a bad time all the time. Is if you don't want crazy in your life, stop dipping your dick in crazy. But in particular with women, you know, there's. I think natural selection is going to absolutely dominate. You know, so the physical appearance of the elements of survival, provision, seduction. You know, those three major categories making up natural selection traits are going to be predominant. But the relationship thresholds are always excelled not through natural selection, but by social selections. The virtuous traits of being within a relationship. You know, for example, I can honestly say that I was sexually attracted to my partner, Mary Frances. I mean, it was very obvious. It was acute. There was a chemical response. But that's not why she captured my attention long term. She captured my attention by being absolutely irreplaceable. The virtuous nature of her character, of her being, how she ran her life, and not the things she said, but the things that she did. And I don't mean like sandwich stuff, but the areas that you would normally not look at. You know, to the point that I don't just call her Mary Frances. She's always the Mary Frances, you know, to distinguish every other Mary Frances in the world from her. And I think you need to go looking for that. And in many ways, you're going to have to go shop. Women are going to have to take accountability and agency for this. If this is important to them, they're going to have to go interview. They're going to have to make it their job to find and to create that. And I don't think they have to necessarily be the man's role, but I think that they have to put themselves in an advantageous position to find the appropriate individual and cross paths. You know, if we're talking social network, how do I find and track that winning job? How do I make myself indispensable to that employer? How do I create the job that's not there? One of the most important ways I think you could do that is by social introduction. A friend of a friend who you highly recommend. And to do that, to traffic that, you're going to have to be vetted by that community and to be engaged in that community and be found reputable within that community before you can have that referral. And that is going to be far more beneficial than any other means of attraction and connection you're going to probably find. Unfortunately, we don't typically have those, particularly where men and women can cross socially. Those institutions exist, but they're frowned on by today. You know, in many cases, they're religious-based, they're community organizational-based. And so, you know, look at those things, you know, and I would sit down and say you're going to have to take a proactive role, particularly in this dating environment. It's vicious, it's cutthroat. Lesser women have commodified it for you, and there's not a whole lot of benefits for a man of quality and worth, even of a marginal level, to sit down and say, I can rent when I don't have to own. And it's far more economically impact. The other heinous thing that feminism has done, it has literally drained it of femininity. And if feminism had concerns about women, they would be concerned about this loss of femininity, their biological natural self. I think all these things have to change. But on an individual level, ladies, you're going to have to do it for yourselves. You're going to have to pick yourself up by the cocktail heel or whatever, Louis Vuitton, and get out there and outperform your peers, but not necessarily in a sexualized WAP role. The notion of what's the lyrics? The relatively polite one. I don't cook, I don't clean. Let me show you how I got this ring. You're going to get those results. And in that particular artist's real life, her life lasted less than a car lease. Her marriage lasted less than a car lease. I think that's a terribly horrible thing to see, and to be indoctrinated and embraced by this culture. So I would say actively go. You want a no-brainer? Come to an event like this, and you're going to find a room of guys that are interested. And in all fairness, if you were really serious about finding a decent guy, don't go to the women's convention. Go to the 21 convention. Go to the patriarch convention. There are single guys there that are looking to be fathers. They're looking to be better men, and they want to know how because they weren't fathered themselves. You want serious men? There's a convention for that. I can show you a room. Personally, you asked me in passing, when am I going to let my daughter date? Mm-hmm. We're starting now. And I'm introducing her to a room of men and developing a culture of men that I will be proud to introduce her to. And by reflection of the people I associate with myself, she will see the type of men she should choose for herself. And that's happening here because of this 17-year-old punk.
Can I comment on that real quick?
Well, he's a little older now.
That's great. What you said at the end, pastors, we share notes. Like, hey, we got these people in our congregation. Well, can we match them? So I really do think, I don't know what to do about women in their really late 20s and 30s right now, in particular in their 30s. But with the younger women, what I would say is, look for a family that's in your community that you trust. If you don't have a strong family you're coming from, that can help filter for you, because we're in your corner and we'll connect you with good guys. The other thing is stay off social media, ladies. Like Instagram, because in terms of competing, you don't want to compete with those people. Those are terrible people, right? Don't let that into you that voyeurism is bad for women. And social media has caused incredible damage to them, kind of like video gaming at an extreme level has for men. And so I would say stay off that so you keep your femininity, because it just sucks it out of them. It makes everything a big show. And that's what I tell every guy. Like, have you seen her Instagram? Like, what's she about? Have you seen her social media? Like, right away, that's what and they're telling me, well, here's her dating app picture. And I'm like, oh my gosh, man. Let's get off the apps, meet them in the wild. This is not the way to go. But I think, ladies, if you're young, stay off social media. Look for people who have what you want, like happy marriages and women that are happy. My wife's very feminine, and she is willing to disciple young women. I know that not a lot of that is out there, but if it is out there, take advantage of it. That'll help. That'll help protect you from making a poor decision. And last one, marry for demonstrated potential. Catch them on their way up. You have to catch people on their way up. When they're at the top, like Emily and I are like, the tree where it grows around the fence, right? We've grown around each other. We've been together so long. Don't wait till they're fully developed. When you see the trajectory, that potential they demonstrate, look at them and show them that you're interested. Let them know, and you won't die alone if you do that. Probably not. So
it's almost like Alan Roger Curry, which you would think that talking about direct approach in this scenario wouldn't fit. But can a man or can a woman say to each other, I want to explore spending the rest of my life with you? Is that a possibility, Michael Foster?
Oh, that's exactly what I did. So now we were young. I'm not going to be a hypocrite here. I got together with my wife in 1999 before the internet has caused a lot of the big troubles we're dealing with right now. But I walked her home and I said, look, I'm going to go into the ministry. I'm going to tell the truth, so people are going to hate me, and there's a chance I'm going to be poor, right? Now, I'd like to get to know you more, but if you can't imagine being part of that, this is not for me, right? It's not for you either. And, you know, I had a real strong mission, made her swoon. And here we are, you know, 8 kids later. It's been good. But I think you can say that. But in the beginning, guys keep faking everything. Instead of being instead of being trying to be interesting, just be interested. People just need to like enjoy life when they first meet each other, relax a little bit and stop the performing. And I think if ladies would just actually take interest in men and just hear them out and talk and see where you'll find out who's in front of you, and then introduce them to your community like Socrates was saying. That's huge.
A lot of people believe in this, the right one, or you'll meet someone when you least expect it. And I hate that stuff. All these like strange myths about meeting people. Coach Greg Adams, how does a woman meet a man? How does she get married if she desires to be married?
Well, I told the 22 convention people, I said one of the worst things to happen to not only humanity but to women is that they place the camera into their hands. Okay? Social media obviously is an issue. If you really were intentional about it, you have to be intentional. You have to delete all your social media apps and dating apps. A lot of people live in major metropolitan areas with 10 million people. That's what my county has. The divorce rate is 72%. But how is it possible you have 10 million people, you can't find one? It's impossible because your head's down into your phone. And not only that, we've limited socially how you can interact with people. Sexual harassment is anything. They can just say it is anything. Cold approaching, you know, I think the PUA industry did a disservice to a lot of people because now women are, on guard a little bit.
Coach Greg.
Yes.
There are women in this audience that don't know what PUA is.
Okay. So that's pickup artistry, which was popularized in the late 90s into, I mean, it's a little bit now, they call them dating coaches, or there's a little bit of cross section there. But now there's men teaching men how to pick up women, but I noticed that women are watching those channels too. So now they're like, I know what you're going to say to me or do to me before you even get here, okay? But I can no longer approach a woman on the street without her being on guard or be susceptible to a harassment claim. Can't date them at work. Can't say certain things at school. It becomes dangerous, especially at the college level, with the amount of claims, false or accurate claims of date raping, okay? So now I think with those systems in place, does it make it difficult to now find a person? Yeah. And now her head's down the entire time. She has 100,000 followers, and here I am. Can I out-attention her 100,000 people on her dating apps and social media with just me, with limitations on how I meet her? It becomes difficult. So I think with the internet, it has smartened us up, but it now has made it complicated for us to meet people. And not only that, some of you guys got here and you got on your Tinder, you got on your Bumble, and you said, who's in, where the hoes at? All right, as soon as you got into town, all right? Didn't you do that? You guys checked to see who was here. Now, married people did the same thing, I'm sure, at least on your social media. So you got to consider, people are looking so far outward for their mate when their mate is right there in their neighborhood, most likely, right there in their circle. What Socrates said in terms of meeting people halfway and saying, look, my friend recommended you. How likely are you going to be a hoe out there with that reputation on the line? How likely are you going to smash and dash her with your friend's reputation on the line? You're not. You're going to do that to strangers. You're not going to do it to your friend's recommendation. So let's think about that a little bit.
I want to jump in really quick. We talk about social media, whether it's Tinder or Instagram. I know that's kind of a standardization, but I had an instance fairly recently, like within the last 30 days, as a licensed architect. One of our clients is a higher education facility, folks, and I was a part of a conversation on the side where the administrator was talking about how they had a counselor's meeting. And the counselors were having commentary that they were under duress, and they actually called the meeting to that effect, that the students, female students returning to one particular department 100% of them had no interest in pursuing the degree for monetary gains or professional development, and were far more interested in the fact that they all had OnlyFans sites. And so what we now have is not just a social media platform, but a social sexualization media platform for profit and economic gain that a lot of these students are turning to. And in this one particular educational facility, the entire department class returning, all the females were more interested in that platform than they were in the pursuit of that degree.
I actually tweeted the other day, I want to mention this one, it did pretty good on Twitter and Instagram, that women today in America, as they're influenced by feminism, are more interested in starting an OnlyFans than starting a family.
Yeah.
And that just occurred to me late, recently one night. I was like, wow.
Yeah, so I think the age of the social media has already been eclipsed by new form of alternative digital.
Can I add one more
eroticism.
thing? Sorry.
Yep.
I want to add one more thing to that. The sexual marketplace value scale in which we know women's fertility is high, their level of attractiveness is high, the amount of men that they can command is high. Well, they're not adhering to that dynamic and trying to trade that value into it for a good spouse. They're using that advantage and trying to gain monetarily. And then when they approach that wall and that wall starting to close in on them, and they do what I call a half-court Steph Curry buzzer beater or a Hail Mary at the end, they say, where have all the good men gone? After they've been ran through more times than the Holland Tunnel. So the reality is, people that watch my show know what I'm talking about here. They hear this a lot. But the reality is, if that's what you're going to do, you're going to wait until 32, okay? When your value has decreased significantly and you've monetarily gained on seeking arrangements and OnlyFans and use that to your advantage, and you probably ran out of your money by 32. Nobody's buying 32-year-old women's OnlyFans, only monkey simps, right? But if you really wanted a man, you're probably going to do it when you're young. That's probably going to be your best case scenario. Not at 32, 42, 52, 62.
Well, there's women in this audience right now, live, and who will be watching this video, Jennifer Molesky, watching this in the future, who are of all ages. It's going to be interesting. How does a woman find a husband? It's easy to find a man, but it's not easy to find a husband. What are your thoughts on the topic?
Well, I am happy I'm not in the dating market. I'm sorry, because what a tough situation it is out there. But I'll tell everyone the same advice I give everyone. There's singles meetups. I would not attend those. I really like the app meetup, and I know that the world ended a while ago, so it's a little bit different. But if you're serious and you want an intelligent, bright man who will guide you and be strong, I would say vet them with your interests. I always talk about this meetup that I started almost 4 years ago to talk about freedom and liberty, and the people that I somehow brought in by the grace of God are the most outstanding intellectuals ever. And I will say there's not as many women as men, but that's just the way it is, unless we were talking about sex. And then it was like a lot of women would come in to talk about sex. But if
more women would come in when the topic was sex?
Yeah,
okay.
Dating and sex, that's when the women would come in. But as far as, and we would talk about, the importance or the not good, whatever that word is, whatever not good is, of discrimination or the NAP, the non-aggression principle, or just all of these really heavy, beautiful philosophical things to discuss. And the women that came to those meetups, those were, in my estimation, high-quality women, because they weren't there just twirling their hair. They were like, let's think and talk and be civil, and it was just a different breed. They weren't Instagram girls coming. They were real meaty, of the earth women. That's really my only advice. I'd have to think on it further, but I like the meetup, to go for interesting things.
Anthony Dream Johnson, how does a woman find a husband? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. I've been thinking about this as we went through the panel, especially earlier. One thing that came to mind that I thought I would mention is that throughout the conference at 22Con and even throughout the 21 conventions, we talk about feminism and feminist. But it's important to note that a lot of women today don't identify as feminist, but they still are. And I think that, and I've said before in my speeches, that feminism in many ways has become the dominant religion of women in America and Canada and Britain and in the West. And that's a big part. So there'll be a lot of women watching her like, I'm not a feminist, but 80% of what they believe that is important to them, like deep fundamental beliefs, is dictated to them by feminism and has been conditioned into them for decades. 21 years old since they were a kid, or whatever age they are, right? They've been watching movies and TV for their whole life over it. So that's an important part of why, if they're watching this and the dating life is not what they want at 21, 31, 41, or whatever, you may not identify as a feminist, and maybe never have, but in many ways you probably are, and then don't realize it. So I think that's a big issue related to this. As far as what to do, like Jennifer said, she said she's glad she's not in the dating market. Yeah, it's a shit show. It's Mad Max out there. I call him Mad Maxie sometimes, from a male perspective. But it's a shit show in reverse, too. There's a bunch of vishy male soy boy pussies everywhere, and it sucks. They're effeminate little weaklings, and it's gross, I'm sure. From their perspective, it must be horrifying as well. Yeah.
I have an idea.
What?
Sorry, no, you please.
Go ahead.
Well, what if the women, when I gave my speech, I was like, women, go out and do something unique and authentic and shine and be the beacon in your community to be feminine. But what if more women that were against feminism created little groups, meetups, I don't care how you do it, to talk about how feminism is bad? Then you have a group of women vetted who don't want to destroy the family, who think and know and can discuss why feminism is bad, and then you can have men come in who also agree, and then you have a group of people who actually want to think and focus on family.
So that's only 10% of women. What about the other 90%?
You don't want to marry
Hang on.
them. You don't want to marry them. I mean, this is about vetting, right?
I want to finish my train of thinking here. This is perfectly tied into what you choose for there. So I brought up the feminism as the religion of modern women in many ways, right? Like a dogma that's very deep and widespread. And I think this is important because, this is throughout the West, not just America, but all Western women. American and Western women are basically driving themselves off a cliff. They're walking off a cliff like a herd of sheep. Not all, but most. It's a massive amount that really are, and either directly, explicitly, or primarily, their lives are dictated by feminism. Major life choices like dating and relationships and marriage and family and motherhood. So the number one thing you could probably do as a woman today, if you're young in America and you're not later in your life, you're earlier on, is do not do what other women are doing. If you see most women acting in a certain way, like delaying motherhood to like 38 years old, 39 years old, do the fucking opposite. Run the other direction, walk the other direction, do the opposite, or at minimum do something different, fundamentally different, think different, Steve Jobs kind of stuff. Do anything other than what the sheep are doing, walking off a cliff in pink pussy hats, anything at this point. If you have to travel, go to another country like Poland, you'll find like real masculine men. Look around the United States, maybe go in the Midwest, you'll find more masculinity there, a lot less feminism, a lot more common sense masculinity and common sense femininity. I found this recently in South Dakota. I went to the Midwest my first time, kind of hunting. I want to go to Poland, but I can't because of COVID. So I went to South Dakota instead. And it was a step in the right direction, and I liked it. So yeah, do something different. Do not do what the sheep are doing, because it's a shit show right now. And it's not going to change anytime soon. Maybe we will succeed and make women great again, and feminism will die. Great. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take time. In the meantime, your eggs are, clock's ticking, your babies are soon to be kicking. So.
I think we should do part 2 and address it to women that are 40 and over, because that's a huge demographic. And I would love this panel to be present for that. And we do that on like a Zoom call or something like
Saturdays.
that. Kind of part 2. That would
Every
be
Saturday,
wonderful.
Redmo group at 11.
Yes. All right. We're going to end this right here. We're going to take any questions that the ladies might have.
Oh, we gotta wrap.
Oh, we have to wrap.
Yeah, we gotta wrap.
Oh.
We don't have time. We gotta wrap. We ended a while ago.
Okay. There we go. Thank you, ladies. I hope you got something out of this. I hope we provided some sanity, clarity, and reason to the topic, and also a bunch of value for you, your friends, other ladies that you know. Thank you for being here.
Welcome back to the 21 Convention Second Patriarch Edition, live in Orlando, Florida.
Welcome to the 22 Convention.
Welcome back to the 21 Convention 2020 of Orlando, Florida, being held for the first time ever at our very first and inaugural 21 Summit event. Welcome to 21 Summit in Orlando, Florida.
Well, here we go. We risked again with the 22 Convention, the Patriarch and 21 Convention, all three stages together in one event.
Not only did we sit down and say we're going to come together in meet in mass, but we're going to take it a step further. We are going to dare have a conversation about the sexes openly, honestly, and engage the women that.
Like, I am amazed at how well this went. We did a brand new event, we did the second Patriarch, and we did the main event for the 19th time.
It's so much more than sitting in an audience watching a man on a stage. The conversations in the hallways, the connections that people make, the challenging, the collaborations.
And that's what we need. It all starts with men. And it's not just men. That's what I like about this. You know, we don't want to like overreact to feminism and then hate women. That's not it. This is about men getting their act together, doing what they're made to do.
You had meals, you had to run security, you had to run travel plans, you had to ensure people were where they needed to be. 3 stages, cameras everywhere, and it was pulled off with flawless execution.
It's evolved so much. I really appreciate how Anthony has allowed you speakers to evolve and to grow and to share that and to encourage that with all the other men here. To hear so much talk on family and fatherhood, there's more depth, there's more room for who they could be.
Is the word patriarchy or patriarch offensive to you in any way?
Not to me personally.
Okay.
Not at all. It's something that I cherish it. I love it. I grew up wanting
cherish the patriarchy.
I do.
In mansplaining news, a 3-day conference for women led by men hopes to make women great again.
But women need to be taught how to be great again. Not my words.
We do. Like how to land a husband, how to lose weight, how to pop out a bunch of kids. Why do men think they need to fix the problems of women?
Well, it says the world's ultimate event for women.
In Orlando, Florida, that's going to be the scene of the crime. It's mansplaining palooza. And say no to the toxic bullying feminist dogma.
Patriarchy is the future.
It's good to see it in person. Until I got here and saw it, and you can see the people in the audience, you see the men that are here committed to listening. I mean, it's just changed my idea of what the conference is. The professionalism, the staff, the way everything is organized. It's given me a different perspective about this particular idea, and I'm ready to put some more fire into it.
Welcome to Dream World, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome to 21 Convention, the Red Man Group for 2020 in Orlando, Florida. I will be your host for this episode, and today you have a distinguished panel of mostly alumni speakers, but we have 2 special guests here, and it is their first time speaking at this event, and I am very looking forward to hearing what they have to say and their inputs and advice that they can give. and the insights thereof. Let's start with our introductions. Let's start on the far left. My main man, Steve the Dean Williams. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell us where we can get contact with you, and where your best material resides.
Where my best what? Intro. Oh, well, how y'all doing? Steve the Dean Williams, themanmindset.com. I'm here I've been doing this for over 30 years, teaching y'all to get your balls out of your woman's purse and manning the fuck up.
We'll edit it. Steve, why don't you take up?
I'm Steve Brule. I run a channel called Studio Brule where we publish the Femengo File and a whole lot of other content, including a series called The Red Zone. We started dealing primarily with academic feminism and how it's taken over the entire university system, and from there, how they've spread throughout society to take over pretty much all of the pillars of our society. I could go on, but that's good, right?
We will. Pat?
My name's Pat Stedman. I'm a dating and relationship coach for men. Pretty self-explanatory. Help guys with their dating lives and relationships. You can follow me on Twitter, Pat_Stedman, or at patstedman.com.
I'm Socrates. You can find most of my personal work at manningupsmart.com. There I am I don't even say I'm a coach, really. I just help people navigate today's sexual marketplace. And in the course of my own personal development, as it's been exercised and developed through this venue with 21C and the Patriarch event, I look at being a father and being a very strong father advocate for both men and men who are looking forward to create a legacy and for that to be multi-generational.
I'm Jay Vincent. I'm an exercise entrepreneur. I own a couple of personal training studios up in New York. And my mission is to change the way people exercise to more of a research-based, scientifically proven approach. New to the 21 convention, this is my first year.
Jack, you're up.
All right. My name's Jack Donovan. I'm the author of The Way of Men. I've been writing and speaking about men and masculinity and myth for over a decade now. You can find my work at jack-donovan.com, and I'm on Instagram at starttheworld.
Elliot Hulse, strongman, strength coach, father of 4, father figure to millions of men worldwide, became YouTube famous, I guess you could say, answering young men's questions about growing stronger in their bodies, in their lives, and that brought me over 2 million subscribers. And so I got a lot of cool shit I like to talk about.
Okay. I'm going to actually pull a little bias since I'm the host. We're going to start off with Jay. And something you may not know about Jay is his personal background with 21 Convention. And I want him to elaborate a little bit about that so you hear that personally from him and kind of understand some of the importance of what his presence here really means. I'm particularly very moved by it, and I think it is a tremendous testament to the work that Anthony has done and the opportunities he's provided many of the attendees and men who attend these functions and watch these videos. Jay?
Sure. So it was about 2013. I began my whole exercise journey really on the path to become a professional fitness model, which I ended up doing so successfully. But after getting into a prestigious modeling agency, they told me I needed to put on more muscle. I had been training my whole life at this point. I had no idea what to do. So started diligently researching, like most of us do, on the proper way to exercise to put on this extra muscle that I needed to put on. Came across a video at this convention, the 21 Convention in 2009 by Dr. Doug McGuff. Watched that whole video start to finish, blew my mind, and changed the way I exercise from there on out. And it changed the path of my life to becoming an exercise entrepreneur, a professional fitness model, and I just found it to be the most life-changing video I've ever seen. So I've always had a huge amount of respect for this convention and what the speakers and the people and the information they provide. Changed my life, and I believe it's going to change the lives of many young men as well.
So in fact, Jay was literally watching the videos online and now finds himself literally up on the stage repeating the process for others, so passing it forward. I find that remarkable, It is absolutely incredible, and this is the impact that happens when men get together and develop a male culture and share that amongst each other. So I really applaud him and the efforts that he's done and being able to tell that story to you today. I hope it influences you individually to do something similar, whether or not you end up here or anywhere else, but just know that you can make a tremendous change in your life for positive influence by following the men behind, around me, quite honestly. So, Steve, let's move over to you. How has 2020 affected you? You are known as a machine for podcasting. It is stunning that when we were in Warsaw, Poland together last year, we would go out, eat. We're up very, very early, and at 1, 2 in the morning, you could flip on a YouTube channel, and there were you on a live cast.
Well, what I love about this atmosphere is men. It's very rare that you get the opportunity to be around real men. We're so far and few, and this gives me the opportunity, and I'm sure that everybody the opportunity to see not only men, but how for you guys out there to see how men behave and see how men interact. So for me, this has always been great. I mean, I'm eternally grateful for you and Anthony for what he's done here. This has also given me an opportunity to meet the panel of men, not guys, but the panel of men here, and also meet you guys out there. And this is just it gives you more inspiration is to keep going and keep pushing, even though you're your own inspiration. But when you see that you're changing the lives, just one small thing, one small detail that you can take from here and you leave with that and you evolve. That's what we all want you to do. And so it's like a kid in the candy store. It's like Christmas all over. It's just a great feeling, man.
Elliot, you are known for being a fiercely masculine male. Not just masculine, you train savagely, you live savagely, and interestingly enough, getting to know you, you love savagely. Can you talk about that?
Loving savagery?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just born that way. It's in my DNA, man. Listen, I am the son of a savage. Literally, my dad grew up in the jungle, barefoot, climbing trees, killing animals, drinking blood. He, with that attitude, king of the jungle, alpha male, brought that attitude to America, where he raised me and a bunch of boys in a blue-pilled world. And I didn't understand my father. I resented my father because I was told that everything that he was toxic. And it took me a long time to realize that he's in me and I am a savage. They tried to give me pills when I was a kid to calm me down. They said I had attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. No, I'm just a savage. One of my talks was Return to the Father, and I'm blessed to be able to give a talk like that because returning to the Father to me is recognizing the savage that he is, the blessing to have an alpha male father, leader in my home, and then to know that that is me. He is me and I am him, and I can embrace that because it works. My father raised 4 of us. He's been married to my mother. There's been, that's a rare thing in and of itself. They are still together. And I modeled my life after the example that he's made. He's 70 years old. He was on the stage here last year. He lifts. He is very assertive and aggressive with his tone and his opinion. And it's what the world needs more of. And so I recognize that maybe I can bring a little bit of that savage daddy to the world that lacks fatherhood.
Fantastic. We're going to move from savagery to barbarianism. Jack, you're sitting right next to Elliot.
Interestingly enough, you did not speak this year. I know you're developing a book, but twofold. I'll give you two questions. It's a one-twoer. The first one, let's talk a little bit about what drove you to come back even though you were not speaking. What was the value? What was the camaraderie? What were the things that brought you here personally? And the second is, can you tell us about the project that took precedence over you speaking? And we discussed earlier, I think you made a great decision on it. I'm glad you kind of do both, and I'm really glad you can actually sit up here and talk to the guys.
Yeah, well, I saw who was speaking this year, and I hit up Anthony at some point, maybe back in June, and I was like, I can just come, right? Is that cool? And he's like, yeah, totally, you can come. And I've spoken here, I think, 4 times, and a lot of these guys are my friends, and they're guys who have influenced me. And this is a year when everybody's been kind of cooped up in different ways, and it's great to get out and interact with peers. And so I wanted to come and do that. And it's interesting to see people give speeches who they say that I influenced them. And I'm like, oh, wow, you went a good direction with that. I got to think about that. That's good stuff. So we can all feed back into each other intellectually. And so I think that was really valuable for me. And also, it's just a good time.
Yeah.
And really so I just wanted to come out and hang out, and it's been great, and a little relaxation. I'm in the process of moving, so I'm like, this is a little mid-vacation. Then I got to go home and pack a truck and move to Utah. So yeah. But as far as the new book, that's been my big project. You get an idea for a book, and then it's just this big homework project that it takes forever. And at least for me, some people write them in like 3 days. I don't know how to do that. If I can figure out how to do that, I want to sign up. But it takes a lot of work. I've had to do a lot of reading, and it's ready when it's ready, And the project that I'm working on is basically my version of King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. I mean, obviously, it's not the same thing, but it's the same idea, dealing with masculine archetypes and integrating ideas from really all the religions that are important, that have been important to men. I mean, there's always a figure of a sky father in almost all these religions. And why do we need a sky father? And it comes in this patriarch concept. Men look up to a father. When you're young, you look up to this father, and that's your ideal of what a man can be. But you can never be exactly him. There's a kind of a platonic form beyond him, this ideal of a father, and that's really what God's come from. That's our idea of God, is this father beyond the father, and so that's kind of the start of what I'm working on, and that's kind of the father. And then we talk about a warrior figure, that there's always a warrior figure, and he always usually has a thunder weapon, and he always kills a giant snake. And I might butcher the Proto-Indo-European, but one of the oldest poetic phrases is Hogwingwent, which it means he killed the serpent. And it's like one of the oldest poetic phrases that they've reconstructed, and that's what men do. They kill monsters. And there was actually a book that a guy put out. I had it on my podcast, and he put out a book, and he was a warrior, and his book is called "We Fight Monsters." And I'm like, yes, that's the thing. That's what's important. And so, what we really think of as masculinity comes from that role. I wrote about it in The Way of Men. That's kind of that striker role, that warrior role. And then the third part, and Tanner brought it up in his speech. He's the only one who's read parts of my book. And that was kind of cool too, because he kind of like rolled it out for me in his speech, and so that was he told me he was going to do that. I'm like, well, I guess I have to show up and listen to your speech. But the third one is kind of this fertility figure, this perpetuating figure. Because there's so many things that we do in life that are really just to keep things going. It's not all this glory, and they're like, oh, I'm strong and I did this, whatever. So much of it is just like, I have to go and call that person again, because I have to build that relationship and maintain it and keep it going. And it reflects back to the idea of tending crops and so forth. Like this fertility pastoral figure, and they've always had gods like that, which Pan and Frey and Dionysus and all these things. So I'm pulling all these concepts together in a way that I think is going to be useful for men, because these are all parts of our lives. And so I'm pretty excited about the project. The book is actually called Fire in the Dark.
Very cool. I'm looking forward to when it comes out. Now, to give you guys an idea of when Jack says hang out, he's done this more than once. It's you start out early in the evening.
you either find a modern equivalent of a fire camp, or maybe it's over by the pool, and you have a bottle of whiskey and a couple of guys, and you start having conversations like this. Invariably, you'll go to bed, and in the morning, you'll be getting up, still kind of light out, and you'll end up coming across Jack and Party, coming back in, sauntering, coming on, and going, they just hung out and talked, did man shit the whole evening, and saw the dawn. And I just think there's just something way cool and masculine about just that. I think that Jack helps bring some of that vitality, masculine energy, and just camaraderie at a scale that is utterly barbaric, but is critical to one of the reasons why I think guys come here. It's not really for the stage presentations or the talks. It's for the camaraderie in the hallways. It's in the sidebar conversations. It's being able to meet and talk to the speakers individually. So it's not one of these conventions in which people just show up and go home at the hotel at the end of the night or at the very end of the presentation set. So just keep that in mind. I know this is about third or fourth time. I'm kind of guilty of it myself, but it's an absolute heroic effort. So congratulations. Thanks. So Steve, I know this is the first time you've come to speak.
That's
Tell
right,
us
yeah.
a little bit about your expectations coming in, what you knew, what you didn't, how you felt, your experiences, and then we'll pause and I'll follow up with another question after that, and we'll talk about feminism and how it's polluting the university systems, but how it's probably gone well beyond that to the K through 12. And the risk involved with sending your children to, quote, Rome, and then when they return, have them not speak to your tribe and values and belief systems. So let's first hear about your experiences coming in and what that was like.
Yeah, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to make it because I spend most of my time in Dominican Republic right now. And I was a bit nervous about international travel. They're changing the rules all the time. They're shutting down flights. They're opening up flights. They're requiring tests. So I wasn't really sure. But I got to know Anthony through, it was after his presentation on Piers Morgan show. Mm-hmm. Was that a year ago or 2 years ago?
Actually, it seems like it was only in January.
Was it that recently?
Yeah,
oh my
9
God.
months ago. Yeah,
it has been a long 2020.
Yeah,
but Janice Fiamengo did a file. We call them files. The Fiamengo file. It's a video dealing with how they tried to trap Anthony and the whole "make women great again" thing. So we were doing a defense of that. And then we had Anthony on to channel to talk about it. And then I got a little rapport with Anthony. We did a thing about Black Lives Matter. And after that video, he was really pleased with that video, that interview with Black Lives Matter issue. He then asked me if I would present here. So that's all I know about make.
Okay. So you segued in kind of nicely with the at least the interviews and everything else. And you had a personal review. But I think it's also intimidating coming into an environment such as this, particularly when it's 3 conventions simultaneously.
Yes, definitely.
So, and what was your experience as a speaker kind of moving through that environment?
It's a positive experience. I have to say I am not a natural speaker. This is like, I have stage fright all my life. When the first time I gave a lecture in public, I was in grade 10. And I stood in front of the class like a deer in the headlights. And I couldn't open my mouth, I couldn't move, until a teacher had took pity on me and said I could sit down. The next time was my defense thesis for my chemistry degree. And I didn't sleep for 3 days. I thought I had started having heart palpitations, and I went to the hospital, and they checked me out, I'm all okay. Then my thesis advisor gave me, kind of coached me through it all, and gave me some techniques to manage it. And I used his techniques for the following 10 years in my career in chemistry, where I had to often give presentations to, the authorities or the bosses in the business. So for me, public speaking is, and that's a pretty deep fear for me. So that fear to me is an indication that that's my direction of personal growth. And I've taken, your fears kind of, especially irrational fears, I think that's, if you face them and wrestle with them, try to get it under control, that's a great source of personal growth. So I don't know if I'm getting to your question.
Well, we're getting there. Actually, I'm fascinated by this segue. Let's stay on this track of you had fears and insecurities with public speaking, but your second time public speaking was in a very serious matter. You're defending your thesis.
Right.
Okay, and you go from that to there's got to be an element where you were up here presenting now.
Right.
Tell us about that transition, because I think a lot of guys have similar type things. I know that I'm always kind of nervous going in, but if we face our fears, they can become strengths rather than weaknesses.
Yeah.
So tell us about your personal journey from your doctoral or your thesis defense to today.
Right. I practiced a lot. I had to practice because that was my job I was 22 years in research in the chemical industry. So there was no choice. I either dealt with this or didn't have a job, So apart from that, I guess one of the decisions, and it's part of the reason why I came too, is I think a lot about if I accept an opportunity or reject an opportunity in life. My decision comes down to, at the end of my life, will I regret more rejecting that opportunity, or will I regret more accepting that opportunity? And I think, in my experience anyways, most of the regrets that I have are opportunities that I didn't take. So that was probably the ultimate decision-making process for me to come here. That we're all going to come to the end of our lives one day.
Yeah, we're all due for a grave.
We all have to go through that. But I think when that day comes, in my own mind, in my own meditation, I hope it's peaceful. I hope to be able to say, I'm ready to go. I did the best I could with the opportunities I had. And so I want to be at peace with that. And so I try to make my decisions with that end point in mind.
That's fantastic. If you don't mind, let's segue to your work with feminisms, the universities, and how pervasive feminism is seeping through culture, all the institutions that we have, and how it's affecting masculinity.
Yeah, that is an enormous topic. And I think that's the defining topic of our generation, of our age, of this epoch. Because feminism is global. And it hasn't left any element of culture untouched. There's basically, Thomas Berry is a thinker. He was rather a passionist priest. And I met him some years ago and went to one of his talks at the University of Waterloo. And he identified 4 pillars of culture: the education system, the legal system, industry, and the religious systems. There are 4 pillars that support a civilization. And feminism went in the 1970s into the university systems. And over the next about 20, 30 years, they completely took over the education system in universities. And the university system feeds everything else in our culture, right? We accept university graduates as experts. And we shouldn't today. The universities are absolutely the worst place to do research, because you can't. The minute you try to do honest research, especially social research, sociology, psychology, if you step even a millimeter outside of the narrative, the accepted narrative, you're going to lose your job, or you'll be severely punished, or your career will be destroyed. So the good work today is going on outside of the university system. The people here, the people who are getting involved on their own time, their own dime, these are the people who feel really passionately, strongly. The university systems, they're politics, they're politicians. They're following a narrative. They're not doing anything new. They're turning the crank, they're repeating feminist doctrine, they're refining feminist doctrine to make it more powerful, to make it more damaging in culture. So I'm going on and on here.
No, it's fantastic. You're doing a great job.
They're in politics.
Yes.
We have a feminist prime minister in Canada. They're in the legal system. We have legal schools teaching feminist jurisprudence today in a lot of legal schools, if not all of them. They're taking over the religions. Even the Pope is becoming feminist-oriented. They're taking over industry. With 1984, there was, and it's an auspicious year, but in 1984 they came out with the affirmative action, which was to preferentially hire and promote women. Okay, so this is all the 4 pillars of society, and this started back in 1970. for the entry into the university system. Now, I was in research at Dow Chemical in 1984, and just starting my career, 2 years in, okay, and I'm a young guy, you know, thinking I've been at the top of my class, I should be having a good career here, right? I'm pretty confident. They had a meeting at every research department. The vice president of Dow Chemical World came, and this happened in every industry, in every group, and starting in 1984. And they gathered us together and they informed us that they were going to start preferentially hiring and promoting women, primarily women. I don't even think they mentioned minorities at that time. It was mostly a focus on women. And all the guys, especially young guys like me, were sitting there thinking, gee, I thought I had a career. But the reality is you only have a career if there's no women applying for that job. You only have a promotion. That was the essence of the message. I thought it would go away. You know, I thought this is another corporate program. They'll stick with it for 6 months to 12 months and then they'll drop it. But it has gotten stronger and stronger and stronger. And now it's incredible. This is a religion that has gripped the world. Now, here's the clincher on that. The vice president of Dow Chemical in that time was a woman in her 50s who got to vice presidentship, which is not an easy thing to do in a company like that, a company of, I don't know what it is, 50 or 100,000 employees. A very tough thing to do, and she did it without any help of affirmative action. There was no need for affirmative action. There's never been a need for affirmative action. That was the start where we shifted away from performance and merit to identity in industry. In industry. And it's in education, it's in politics. Our Prime Minister in Canada selected his cabinet based on gender, not on qualifications for the job. Our health minister is a ex-graphic designer. She's an ex-journalist. Zero experience in health, okay? Our, what's the other one that we have there? There's another minister in a very prominent position. She's deputy prime minister. One of them is the health minister and the other one's a deputy prime minister, but they're both women. The other one's a graphic designer. Neither one of them have any experience. A finance minister. Our finance minister is the ex-journalist. Zero understanding, zero training in finances, running the finances of a major country because she's a woman and she's feminist.
That's remarkable.
I could go on, but I'm going to pass the baton here.
And honestly, I'm saving Pat almost for last. We're going to move from an incendiary topic to a particularly even more incendiary. We talk about feminism and as a religion taking over the world. How has the dating environment been affected and associated with the current events? And I want you to understand that the man sitting to my right has recently, through a Google search of my understanding, now owns the word hypergamy, that he has had more citations for that.
World's foremost expert on hypergamy.
Thank you. So it's a new title holder. I think publications coming up more recently. And I'd like to talk to just a little bit about your background in dating, hypergamy, relationships, and feminism, and your viewpoint on that subject matter.
Yeah, I'll just give a real quick bio. Got involved in the pickup space back in 2008 and spent about 7 years or so marinating through the various iterations of that as it evolved. Became a dating coach myself in 2015. Got married that same year. I work with guys in their dating lives and relationships. So wear a lot of hats. I do a lot of tactical stuff, but I also do a lot of depth work. And of course, you know, as Socrates, you've been saying, it's really difficult to separate this, increasingly difficult to separate what goes on in the sexual marketplace, so to speak, with these political movements. I mean, I think that the only thing you can, like, we should just call feminism exactly what it is. I mean, it's a communist, it's in communist insurgency. It's part of a cultural revolution that's been going on in this country for a long time. And I do think that, you know, I try to be nuanced on these issues, and I understand certain parts of it in terms of maybe the evolution of women and some of their consciousness being raised, perhaps developing some individual agency. I talked about this at 22 convention. But I mean, that's not what it actually is now. And I think that we have to start to be very clear about the brand name of feminism and the fact that it is an incredibly unequal movement, and its basic purpose is the destruction of the family and the destruction of society.
Fair enough. You're also an expecting father.
Yes.
More than a yes. Come on, you get.
Yeah, my wife's on her 3rd trimester right now, and we're looking forward to it. Looking forward to a beautiful girl.
And this is from a man who's coming from a pickup background. I mean, he and I are both living in the same glass house in that regard. So now I understand. Now, do you know the sex of the child?
Yes, it's going to be a girl. She'll be born around Christmas.
Isn't that fantastic? Now, interesting enough, there was some rumor, I'm being told, that you had a gender reveal party last night. Something with a Dodge Charger.
I'm going to get roasted here. All right.
And a bottle of vodka or tequila and a
champagne
in the back of the trunk of a Dodge Charger going down I-Drive. I think there are photos, and I hate to say it, I may have borne witness to that actual event. It did occur. So, Elliot, on the far end of the spectrum, I know we talked about your passionate living, how you live life, how you love, but you gave a really interesting 21 convention talk regarding Marxism and socialism and the involvement of communism and how it's affected men, masculinity, and how it's impacting our lives. Can you touch a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so I started my talk with the facts about how men are doing today. We're not doing really well at all. There's all this talk about helping women, but the fact is that women are beating us in every regard. They're making more money than us, regardless of what they say. They're taking their lives. They don't kill themselves like we do. Our suicide rate is off the roof. We're using a lot of drugs. We're in prison, fatherlessness. And so knowing that men are weak, we're suffering, we got to look at, well, why? What's going on? And so I gave various different reasons, one of which ties in very closely to what we're talking about right now, which is a great brainwashing that has happened across the West. And I referenced Uri Bezmenov, who's a KGB defector, who defected and came to reveal what the ultimate plan was, and to get into the universities, to get into the government, to get into the media, and to completely demoralize the culture. Now, I had to dig a little bit deeper. That kind of interested me into who would do this and why. And so I pointed out that this calculated destruction of the culture comes from hell, it comes from Satan, but ultimately on earth through his minions in this movement out of Russia. And the idea that Marxism could take hold through political means or bombs and bullets just didn't prove to work. Economically, it just didn't prove to work. The people were not uniting and overthrowing the people in high places. So 2 guys, Antonio Gramsci and George Lucas. I mean, I'm just learning all this stuff. So they, at the same time, discovered that in order for Marxism, i.e. the communism, to take hold, they would need to get into the hearts and minds of the people, demoralize them, destroy them. And so my presentation and my research dovetailed perfectly into what Steve was talking about, and he took it and ran and showed how a new world order is ultimately the goal of this, well, destroy the West through Marxism, which feminism is a daughter of communism, you could sort of say, ultimately in order to create a what he just calls a feminist world order, and you could totally see it, and it's very fascinating. So I did a little research before I came into my talk in order to just find out why men are weak, and you could see that the men's reaction to this, particularly as it, Pat Stedman is talking about in terms of dating and intersexual dynamics, has created this phenomenon of the nice guy. And so men are doing what they think they're supposed to do because the school teachers have told them, the media has shown them that it's better for them to be weak. It's better for them to be pushovers. And it's not working because we're offing ourselves and we're in prison. One last point that I want to make that was really what broke my heart was to discover that feminism, which sound to most people in our world like some sort of a good thing, a progressive thing, ultimately the agenda is to break down the family, destroy the family. It's the stated purpose of feminism. And so in a world where men are weak because there's no fathers, families are being destroyed, it really seems like feminism is the long arm of this movement to destroy our world.
I couldn't agree more. Now, moving to a slightly different gear, Jay, I'm going to come to you. We talk about weak men, and you have a physical training background. And what I'd like you to talk about is a little bit about the video that you saw with Doug McGuff and the training protocol. I know about the Big Ten and the HIIT protocol, but can you talk to the guys about putting on mass and strength and what a HIIT protocol looks like and why it's effective associated with recovery training and the neurological responses to muscular growth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just like a lot of other topics, I mean, a lot of topics and industries have been pretty much hacked, and for the most part, when it comes to exercise, people have been just outright lied to. And it's not really their fault. It's just kind of like how the information age works. There's a lot of information out there. The waters have been muddied, and the fact of the matter is, most people are approaching exercise wrong. The fact of the matter is, it takes very little exercise, very little time involvement to pretty much manifest the ultimate physique your genetics are going to allow. And I discovered the actual physiology behind exercise through this convention, through a video from Dr. McGuff. Have been since applying the principles to myself, and like I said, it helped me become a published model, helped me put on, loads of muscle mass, and my mission is to teach as many people as I can that they can do this as well, and they can exercise, and you should exercise. If you want to be a fulfilled, accomplished man, you want to be healthy, you want to be strong, you want to look good. There's that's not toxic. There's nothing wrong with wanting to look good and muscular. And a lot of men just, either they're afraid or they feel they don't have the time or they don't know what to do, and that's what I'm here for. I'm here to show you what to do, and that video helped change my life and helped me understand the proper principles behind physical training and strength training and putting on muscle mass. And that's what I do for a living now. I own a couple of personal training studios, and I do this for not only men, I do it for women. Because again, with the whole fat shaming thing and, fat is beautiful. I mean, it's, you could be a beautiful person, but physically it's not attractive. And I think women should also be working on themselves physically as well. And one of the biggest issues is people think time is getting in the way. They don't have enough time. But the research shows clearly that, very little time investment could work wonders for you physically and also mentally too. I mean, as Elliot talked about, a lot of men are depressed and they're killing themselves, and there's no denying that psychologically exercise has a huge benefit. Psychologically, you feel great not only when you improve yourself physically, but there's neurotransmitter responses and upregulations and things like oxytocin and serotonin that are going to make you feel better over time naturally. We've got a lot of men who feel bad about themselves. They're going to the doctor. They're getting put on an antidepressant. A lot of it could have to do with hormone levels. I mean, men have been robbed of testosterone lately, mainly due to kind of the food they're eating, maybe their environment and lack of exercise, stress. We can turn these things around. We can make men stronger both physically and mentally and emotionally. by implementing exercise and finding a time-efficient, safe way to do it. So that's what I'm here for, and that's my mission in a nutshell.
You spoke earlier how you were already a male model, physical model, and that you needed to put on more muscle to attain the professional viability that you desired. What was the transition like? Not so much the physical training, but the mental aspect of what the difference between your former physical self to the level that you attained. What was the difference between the two of you personally?
The difference was, I was, in order to be marketable, I had it to be bigger, more muscular. I mean, that's what sells. That is what's desirable. That's what's rare. That's what men want. That's what men are after, despite what toxic masculinity will tell you. Men do want to be big. Men do want to be strong. And that's what I was after, building a bigger, more powerful, more dominant, broad physique.
Yep. And how did that impact your life outside of the profession?
Tremendously. Personally, I mean, whether right or wrong, I'm more respected. I hear that, a lot of people I talk to, people in public will say rude things to them. They will treat them differently. Nobody ever says rude things to me. Nobody treats me poorly. And whether right or wrong, that's the fact of the matter. A bigger, more powerful, stronger, healthy physique, you're gonna find things come to you easier in life. You're gonna find that people treat you differently, that people respect you more. That's another reason why everybody should be exercising. They should be trying to get as big and strong and fit, as healthy as they can, because not only is your life gonna be better between interactions with people, you're going to have a longer, more fulfilling life with more energy. So it impacted my life in a tremendous way, not only being in magazines and being the whole published model thing, but just the way I interacted with people changed tremendously, and it made my life better.
Yeah, fantastic. We've gone from Elliot talking about the men being weak ideologically. We've talked about you with men being weak physically. I'd like to move this over to Steve in a second and talk about how men are weak genetically. We talk not so much a pure genetic element, but that we're weak in our understanding of our manifestation of our particular genetic lineage. And we may call that family. And you have a terribly rich history that you are indoctrinating your family with, and have, I know, been taught that, and you've shared that repeatedly, and I think it's absolutely commendable, and I would love for these gentlemen to hear that.
Well, I always like to tell everyone that listens to me, no matter how we got here, some of us came above the boat, some of us came below the boat. No matter how we got here, our ancestors, regardless of what happened, they always knew their name, and they kept it, and they defended it, and they would die for it. And they created sons who created other sons, who created other sons, who created your grandfather or your great-grandfather, who created your father, and who created you. And it seems like we're at this war now where people don't want you to know your name. They want you to be what they want you to be. And see, I pride myself on who I am because I'm a Williams. It's like these gentlemen, they are prideful in their names because they respect the father. And we have gone away from that. That's part of the problem that we're dealing right now. Just because dad's not there doesn't mean you can't learn about dad or go find dad and find the other half of the truth sometimes, because sometimes we get only one side of the story from mom, if that, or grandmom, or some type of female telling you that dad, he just didn't care, he didn't love you. Maybe dad just got tired of mom's shit and said, you know what, I'm gone. But it doesn't mean he doesn't love you. But when it comes to your name and the importance of your name, gentlemen, I always want you to realize at the end of the day, you got to learn who you are. I'm all about legacy and bloodline. I want to create something. Well, I have created some things, several things, to carry my name on when I die. That was my goal, to find a wife, because at that point I knew that I wanted to have sons. I wanted daughters. I wanted grandkids. I wanted great-grandkids. If I'm lucky, great. But I know my name, and I think even these gentlemen here, even though they don't talk about your name, they're giving you components that attach to your name. They give you a sense of individuality that each and every one of you are authentic. We are not the same. You can look at your fingerprint and tell that. Your name should be something that you carry on and defend and fight for. You just don't give it away to a woman. You don't give your sperm away to a woman. You don't give your time away to a woman. You damn sure don't give your respect away to a woman. Why? Because at the end of the day, that's all you have. You know, yes, work out and do all those wonderful things. But take away the weights, take away the clothes, take away the cars, take away the money, take away the fame. All you have at the end of the day is your motherfucking name. And if you don't stand by that, you're nothing in this world. Because that's the thing that we should push you to evolve every day. And that's the thing you should appreciate about your family and your lineage, that, you know what, there was someone somewhere way back then loved themselves enough to create their sons. And then the thing continued and steamrolled, and now you're here. And I just want to say this. The only problem I have today is that we have evil people out there telling you it's wrong to have kids. It's wrong to grow. It's wrong to get married. It's wrong to even have, don't jerk off type bullshit. I don't know what. But what they're saying is that your name is not good enough. And once you learn the importance of your name, you will be guided in a way that you've never been guided before. And that's my beacon. And last thing I want to say is, what I loved about my name, even when I was small, my dad would always tell me, man, that's a fucking Williams. You see that hand? That's how I eat a hamburger. That's how Williams does it, son. You open that door, that's how Williams does it, son. When he whipped my ass, that's how Williams does it. Absolutely. But it was a Williams. And that is the most thing that when you see a person, when you go to your job, or you go to an interview, or you go meet a woman, or you say hi, you stand up tall, put your shoulders up, and be proud to introduce you or the person to who you are.
And gentlemen, I know he doesn't necessarily show photos of his family, but I'm telling you, the proof is in the pudding. When you see photos of his children and family, they glow. And you just sit down and go, damn, he's an attractive man, and what a lovely freaking family he has. It's just absolutely radiant. So, congratulations, and I've always held that in sincere regard. So, Jack, we're gonna slide over to you again. Without going religious, I want to think of masculine spirituality, but not from a religious standpoint, much more of a primal element in the mysticism. And where do you see today is man non-religious spirituality being? You know, that core richness of a human connection with nature, their own manifestation of masculinity, sexuality, expression of creativity. And you do a really good personal job of manifesting both the brutal masculine aspects of the physical form, but the craziest thing is the degree of art and poetry that you have and have expressed. That's not necessarily so obvious. Can you talk a little bit about that to the gentleman today?
About the art of poetry, or
take it up. I mean, it's one of those things. I think it gets. When we talk about religion or spirituality, it tends to always be religious based, and I think you would be a prime example of not necessarily a religious individual, but a spiritual individual, but in a unique vein, and particularly with your association with masculinity and mythology.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's all the same. I started writing The Way of Men and was basing a lot of things off of evolutionary psychology. I'm not pulling from a Bible or whatever. I'm pulling from evolutionary psychology, and like what have men always needed, and what have they always cared about, and what have they always done. And one of the reasons why my new book is called Fire in the Dark is when I talked about it in The Way of Men, I talked about the perimeter, and that's where we get masculinity from, because it's always been our job to protect the perimeter. And the thing that makes us different, the way we've evolved, we evolved our fists probably to hit each other, in a certain way. And we evolved some skills that are different from women to be stronger and so forth, so that we could do this job of hunting and fighting. And my idea, and why the book is called Fire in the Dark, is that, if you take a campfire and you say you have, this is the myth that I'm writing, is you have men that they left wherever they came from, and they can't go back for whatever reason. We don't know why, and it doesn't matter. But they're just wandering out into the world. So they have no point of reference. You know, there is no, you know, we're going home because there is no home. When you create a fire, somewhere like, well, oh, this is where we're going to stay for the night because the sun's going down. And you kind of recreate the sun by creating a fire. And I think that's the symbol of, you know, creation and the father and culture, and that's what you're trying to keep alive. And so you create something and then you need to protect it. And that's what the warrior does. He protects, you know, everything that's important, everything that's around the fire. I mean, you have your family around the fire, you know, whoever's there with you, all your friends, everything you care about, your language is there, everything that matters is around that fire. And then, you know, if you're going to keep that camp alive, you have to perpetuate it. So I'm pulling all these myths actually from what I think is the most primal form. You know, this idea of like every time, and you do that every time, even if you're just recreationally camping. You go out and we're going to create a fire, and then that's your little world. You started the world right there. That's your little world that you've created. And so I think men have always cared about these three functions because it's fundamental to our job and what we've always done. So I think it is primal. And it's not stuck in any one religion or whatever. And that is our spirituality because it comes from our function and it comes from our biology. And so that's the way I look at that. And then when we talk about you know, adding myth and adding art and so forth, one thing that Tanner and I really agree on, and we nerd out about it. I'm like, when I gave him the chapter of this book, I'm like, you're gonna like this part, because men today actually think that they hate art. Most men, if you ask them about like, oh, I don't like art, you know, like art is for girls, or like you know, poetry is for girls, or like they don't connect with it. And the reason why they don't connect with it is because art doesn't like them. And I think you have this art, if you think about ancient art, all the examples that we have of great cultures and everything are statues of heroes and you know, statues of greatness. And these are the things that our culture cared about, and men were invested in it. They were creating the art, and they were the ones who made it. And they were the poetry, well, all the best old stories are in poetry, like Homer and so forth. I mean, it's tales of men doing epic things. Men created all of this. And there became a space, like kind of like romanticism, where it became very individualistic and kind of this breakaway from authority. And then it was informed by Marxism, I think. And so all the men who were against their father and they had the daddy issues, kind of like, I hate these rules and everything, we're going to tear down society, started to become artists. And so the culture of the art world, you know, becomes much about deconstruction. Rather than construction, it becomes about deconstruction and tearing things apart and making things that are ugly and you know, just pushing boundaries and you know, challenging narratives and you know, like changing the world and taking all that hierarchy away. And that's why men don't respond to it, because people are creating art that's against strength and courage and mastery and honor. They're not celebrating the things that are important to us. And so when men go to a museum, they're like, that's not for me. Or they read poetry and it's like about someone's feelings and they're saying how weak they feel and all this, and then that's not for me. I don't care about that. But I think it's really important. I think when the artist is working with other men instead of against him, they create a culture that raises men up. And so I think that's really, really important. I'm passionate about that. And I actually, like, let's look at what can we do that celebrates manhood and works with the men who are warriors and works with the men who are leaders, and what you know, makes us passionate about that and care about it again, because that's what really inspires men. We look at movies. I know Steve likes Thor, right? And you know, the comic, those are our myths today. You know, like we men connect with those as little boys, and it's in our hearts, and like that's what we want to do, is become that guy. And you know, if you go and try and lift a PR or whatever, I listen to the Thor soundtrack when I do that. You know, like you plug into that thing because you want to be that magical guy, and that's so important to us. And I think that if we don't find a way to connect that to the kind of things that we're doing, that's how you create longevity and create a new culture that is exciting for men.
Super.
Socrates, just want to say real quick.
Yeah, no, that's why we're here.
Poetry. Mm-hmm. See, if people don't understand that, they complain. I love poetry. I tell people I love poetry. Mm-hmm. But what people don't know is that you sing poetry every day when you turn your radio on. Everything you hear in music is poetry. So he's absolutely right. It's poetry's everywhere. It's not just writing roses are red, violets are blue. That's just all I say, but you're a million percent right.
Cool. We have about 11 minutes left. Steve, I'm gonna turn this one to you because I just want to hear a little bit more. I know we talked about the pervasive nature of feminism in higher education, academic research, corporation. Personally, I spoke at Patriarch about the concerns about the cultivation of our children going to educational centers, particularly government-run schools and so forth. And it's not necessarily uncommon for today to find those school systems to be devoid of national pride. So, for example, the national symbol of a flag being removed from the classroom, but other systems being brought in and replacing it. So it's not uncommon to find elements of critical race theory being injected or promoted, Black Lives Matter, the degree of feminism, those sort of things are openly displayed. And I'm concerned about the social construct here, is that we turn our children over with the understanding that we will have specialists come in to teach our children, to help cultivate our children, that should reflect our community values, and are essentially of our tribe, of our group. But there's been a broach of that in the last 20 years, in which we're sending our children to education systems that no longer have specialists that have our interests at stake. They don't reflect our values, and in turn, we are turning our children over to be raised and developed by others that don't have our interests and family's interests at stake. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I'll try. One thing that came to mind as you were talking there was through this pandemic, they've been prohibiting kids from going to school, I think in most jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. And they've been creating these online classrooms. And maybe you guys have heard about this, but somebody found a private tweets or private communications from teachers saying they were concerned that the parents were monitoring their children. And they were saying this is a bad thing. We have to prevent parents from monitoring their children while they're at the online classroom, because they didn't want the parents to know what they were teaching the kids. They didn't even want them to know. Right there is their admission that they don't have your kids' interest at heart. They openly admit it when they say, parents monitoring what we teach your kids is a problem. You know, they want to get these ideas into the kids without your parents knowing about it. You know, and that to me speaks volumes. And it's you mentioned the Black Lives Matter getting into the school system. Yeah, they're teaching all kinds of these things as if it's truthfulness. And Black Lives Matter, I did a video on this, and Anthony, I think Anthony was. Sorry? The video I did, and I think Anthony and I talked about this on a live stream once. The video I did was Get to Know Black Lives Matter. And maybe you guys know this stuff. I'm never sure how much people are familiar with, but Black Lives Matter is not a black group. It's a feminist group through and through, and they purged this stuff off their website in the last few weeks, I think, their feminist content. So that is, and they have, in spite of their lies, they got that authorized to be taught in the education system. The grade schools, they have a curriculum, and the schools, as far as I know, they're adopting this. And that's just one of it. The 1619 Project, it's lies. And the lies are being taught in schools. Feminism. I highly encourage you to take a look at my video, The Birth of Feminism, and I start in Roman times, and we go up to 1848. The primary claim of feminism at the Declaration of Sentiments in the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848, their primary purpose there was to establish permanently the idea that women were oppressed on all sides by men throughout history. They were not even concerned about the vote. Most people are under this impression that the big feminist movement started up because women didn't have the vote and men had the vote. Look, men didn't have the vote either. Men generally in the world got the vote maybe a decade or less before women did, and only because they died by the millions in the wars. And the governments of the time felt that they could not justify not giving men the vote who had gone off and died to protect the very country they couldn't have a say in. Women got the vote for free. And today in the US, you guys probably know this, men still do not have universal suffrage, universal franchise. You have to sign up for selective service to be allowed to vote. Women do not. Only women in the US have the universal right to vote. Okay, men do not. But up to 1848, the only reason the right to vote was put in there is because a guy named Frederick Douglass objected. It was a black man. And get this. Okay, I hope I'm not taking up too much time here because they get me in a passion here. 1840, there was an abolition convention. And Elizabeth Stanton, newly married, went to that convention but was not allowed to sit in the prestige seating. This pissed her off. She was not allowed to sit in the prestige seating at an abolition conference that she had a passion about abolitionist. Okay, that was why she created the 1848 convention, not because she wanted the vote. She was pissed off that she was insulted at the 1840 abolition movement. So she created her own conference where she could be front and center. Okay? And get this,
scorned.
It gets worse. The whole movement, people with suffrage and women's rights and black rights, they were all part of the same group. They communicated with each other. So it was a black man who got the right to vote put in the Declaration of Sentiments as a concern. The white women were not concerned with the right to vote, and the reason is women have always influenced government through their brothers and fathers. It's called the Petticoat Parliament. You're probably familiar with the term. So women always felt that they didn't need the vote because they ran the men. Okay, imagine a guy. He's a lead politician. He might be president. He goes into Parliament or he goes into the White House. He does something in law, in public, that his wife doesn't like. Now he goes home. And every day he goes into bed and his wife pesters him. He didn't like what he did. What is he going to do in office? Is he going to continue pissing off his wife? No, and all his wife's friends and all their social gatherings and all the women beating him up and harassing his friends? No, that's the Petticoat Parliament. Women were not concerned about the right to vote because they already influenced government before they had the right to vote. But they refused. I'm going to stop there because there's a lot more to this.
You're a gentleman. I was going to have to stop because we're literally about 3 minutes.
sorry
Let's
for
go
taking
around
up
the
too much
horn
time.
on the panel with you guys. Last 30 seconds thought. What would you leave the audience with, and we'll continue in order along the panel.
That, we're having all these conversations about feminism. It really has been a big part of the conversation this week. And I don't want anybody to take our position, our stance, or even just the information that's exposing what's going on as a complaint. We're not coming from a position of weakness here. It's a position of we need to see. This needs to be exposed. We need to see it for what it really is, because there is a tendency for people who are not schooled or aware of the things that we're talking about to say, well, what's the big deal? Why are you whining? Why don't you just do something about it in your life? Well, the whole idea is that we've been brainwashed. We're dead asleep. Our eyes are closed. People just don't know. And so this is a position of strength. This is a position of wake up. This is the position of we've got to do something about this. Otherwise, we're all going to suffer. Feminism is not good for women at all. It's about hatred towards the family, and women suffer when their children suffer, because the family is a sacred unit. And so ultimately, this is for everyone to have a better future, and for our families to have a better future.
Jack, you're up.
Yep. I'll just bank off of that and say one of the things that I've noticed is that feminism always talks about making women adding value to them, and men used to look at a woman and say, I want a wife who's going to help me make a family. And the funny thing is that women have devalued themselves, and now they're just sex objects. If they're not searching out a partner for them, they're just making them pure sex objects. So that's something that you rarely hear, is that you've made yourself objectified because you had a role before. And, but like Elliot said, this is about making men better. It's just important to understand the problems that come with feminism because they're all woven into the culture. And so, but the real focus, I think, of this conference always has been to make men stronger, to make them better at everything aspect of life.
You're up.
Obviously, as Elliot said, and many other these people on this panel have said, is men are weak now. All right, we need men to become stronger, both physically, emotionally, psychologically, and of course physically. So in my area of expertise, I'm going to recommend don't ignore your body, don't ignore your health, because when the shit hits the fan, we need strong men, and we need them strong physically as well. So keep that in mind. Take your health, take your strength seriously, because it's gonna all come together when you need it. So that's what I'd like to add to it.
Pat?
My 21 convention speech this year was on how to heal yourself as a man. And I think that especially, everything being shut down, we've had a very, very unique and important period for guys to do the inner work. And this is important stuff for your dating and relationships. It's important for your own life. But to bring it into the context of this conversation, it's important because once you have this psychological self-awareness, once you sort of heal your trauma, you become immune to psychological operations like feminism. And the problem with a lot of women today, and men of course too, is that they've been broken down over and over again by demoralization campaigns, and they've been highly traumatized. And so then they run these psychological operations which feed on that. If you go out and date today with women, the amount of dissonance that they have is enormous because they don't even know what they want. They have shame around what they want. I have tons of guys, they're dating a girl, everything's fine, and then she'll start to bring up Trump and politics and just have like a meltdown. And the point here is that the deep work is important because if we're going to be, warriors in this, and we have a world to fight for, and then we have a world to rebuild, you guys got to get your internal shit figured out, and this is the best time to do it.
Steve, you got 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Oh, my God. I'm going to add one point to my last point because I feel it's important. Feminists stole the oppression narrative from slavery, from the abolitionists of 1840. They had a legitimate...
Say it one more time.
Feminists stole the oppression narrative. They literally did. Women have never been oppressed throughout history. They were protected and provided for. The entire feminist narrative is a lie. The 1840 Conference on Abolition is significant because that's where they got the idea, that Elizabeth Stanton got the idea to define women as oppressed on all sides through all history by men. It's a lie. They stole that legitimate idea. The real oppression that occurred in much of the world was the institution of slavery. And in the U.S., that was, of course, against black people. So I'm going to leave it at that. That's the last idea for today.
You ended strong on that one, dropped a bomb. Now, another bomb dropper is just on your right. My good friend, Steve Williams. I will give you a full 30 seconds as well.
I just give me 29.
You take. I'm going to give you 28.
I need 29. Gentlemen, I want you to see this panel of men, okay? Look at this panel of men up here. Understand this. We are not going to be here forever, this whole panel of men. And what the 21 Summit is all about is passing the baton to you, preparing you men out there, not only to navigate your lives as men, but the next door over there, the patriarch, learning how to become men. Everyone here is a bona fide man in his own way, in his own style, but being together as independents, coming here in the summit, we are here to pass the baton, pass information, make you better men. And it is up to you, because we're not going to be here forever. So we're holding you guys accountable. Take the baton, run with it. So when you're up on this stage and you're talking to whoever's out there, then you can pass the baton. And I guess in the summit, the Red Men Group Summit, 48, 55, somewhere around there? Yeah.
We're up
This is going on forever. Anthony's not going to die. He's going to be here forever.
He's going to outlast us all.
So that was like 28 seconds.
28. All right.
28.
With that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining this Red Man Group panel. I'm Socrates, coming live from the 21 Summit 2020, Orlando, Florida. Thank you for joining.
He represents is patriarchy. We're here to do work as men, as patriarchs.
There's nothing more natural than being a father.
Welcome back to the 21 Convention 2020 here in Orlando, Florida. Patriarchs Edition Red Man Group. We have 65 minutes where we're going to cover fathering during fallout. How to lead your family with all the chaos that's going on in the world. So this is the Patriarchs edition of the Red Man Group. We just wrapped up a great weekend of parenting, of fatherhood, of becoming a better father, of what to expect when you become a father. On this panel, to my far right, your left, I have Ivan Throne, Big Tex, Phil Foster, and to my left, Tanner Guzzi, Michael Foster, and the George Bruno. With that, we're going to dive into how the convention went for the speakers, and then for the last 15 minutes, we're going to have a Q&A from those in attendance. So first, Ivan, how was the convention for you?
Well, I think the 21 Patriarch Conference has been, it's a fundamentally different thing now because it's not theory being done. It's the second year. Men are actually making the changes now. We're seeing the results out there with people. Guys are coming back, they have more children. Families are happier, families are stronger. The men are more confident, more responsible. The leadership is changing the times, and we have the privilege and the honor of being a part of what drives that with practical, real-world action on changing men. It's not an idea. Reality. And as men, our job is to make reality. And it's beautiful to see it finally being done again, especially as the world burns and it's needed. That's my take.
I think we'll all agree with that. Tex, how was it for you?
It was fantastic. I cannot think of a better time for us to have gotten together for this. With everything, as Ivan just alluded to, with the world burning right now, and by gosh, it really is burning right now. There's never been a better time for fathers to get together and reinforce their resolve and reinforce their commitment to their families and pick up the life skills that you need to make that happen. And what we saw again was a group of men coming together like we did last year, roughly 18 months ago. We were able to get back through it again, get through COVID, get back out here, and come together and learn from each other. And even as the old guy in the group, I'm learning from these younger guys as well. I'm picking up tips on how I can help my grandsons do better in life, things that I wish I had done with my son, that type of thing. So there's generational knowledge going up and down the spectrum here. So I hope we continue to do these as the years go on. I think it's a very valuable resource, and this year was even better than last year, and last year was superb.
We keep raising the bar.
Absolutely.
Before I toss it to Phil, I'd like to make a first-time announcement, a special announcement. You know, during the first 21 Convention Patriarchs edition, I had the privilege and the honor of being the chief patriarch. And who could go after that and bring it up and do justice to it? Nobody but Tanner himself. And he went up there and he set that bar. He set a high mark. And then Tanner said, well, we've got to choose the next guy, and he did. And he came over and asked, he said, hey, what do you think? I said, I absolutely agree. So it doesn't make any more sense than to talk about raising the bar than to give it to the man who's known for raising the bar, the barbell man himself. Phil Foster is next year's chief patriarch.
Right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Phil, you're a first-time 21 convention speaker. Then you went to 22 Con, and now you're back on the stage.
Yeah, it's been an interesting ride for me this go around. I attended the Patriarchs Convention last year and 21Con the year prior to that. And what I've taken away from this conference is it's great to see the amount of true heart and soul that a lot of the gentlemen that put their butts in the seat, so to speak, in front of the camera and bare their soul to help gentlemen continue to grow on their paths to being better fathers, men and husbands. It's amazing to see the gentlemen get together after the speakers, with the speakers and with themselves, and exchange ideas and improve themselves year after year. So this is, like I said, my second Patriarchs to attend and first time to speak at one, and it has been an amazing experience to be a part of it all.
That's great. It's an excellent selection, and there's nobody better I could think to take that torch and carry it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, the Chief Patriarch himself. This is your ship to navigate, and from what I've seen, you did a damn good job. So
Thank
Tanner,
you.
how was the convention for you this time as leading the way?
Man, best one it ever was, best one it ever will be. No, I was kidding. I absolutely loved it. There was the level of hope and energy and intentionality and earnestness that I saw in the men who were in the audience, and especially because the majority of them are men who have been here before. There's a tribe that's being built here. And from a very selfish perspective, that I got to spend 4 days having my batteries recharged, being around men who are unapologetically pursuing wanting to be better men, wanting to be better fathers, wanting to be better in every single facet, because it can feel really lonely when you're the only one in your neighborhood or in your community or in your workplace or anything else that even cares about this stuff, when it feels like everybody else is just more interested in what can I consume or what can I lull myself away with or anything. And to be in a room full of men who take it seriously, who are earnest about it, and we're genuinely seeing the progress that they're making. All of these guys have already mentioned this. They come back in better shape, and they've got better body language, and they carry themselves better. They're dressing better. Everybody's leveling up their games, and it's putting pressure on us to keep leveling up our game, and it's the best. So I've loved it. It's been great.
I really appreciate what you said about watching the tribe form, because before our eyes and before the men who attended the Patriarch's eyes, you see men who are going from consuming, as you said, to using technology to connect with other like-minded men who now they're no longer confined by proximity. Mm-hmm. They're from all over, getting each other's contact. Like, hey man, how you doing? You know, what's new? Still working out? Still leading the family? You know, still dialing things in?
And there's evidence that they are doing all those
exactly.
things. Absolutely.
Michael Foster, first-time speaker, and your speech was talked about quite a bit since you gave it. How was it? How was the convention? How was your experience?
It was great, man. I had a great time. Tanner and I were talking about a little bit what I expected as a Presbyterian Christian family man, pastor. I didn't know what I was 100% getting into, so I thought there would be bad elements and good elements, but it was almost all good and very, I've grown, right? I've benefited from it. The way I kind of look at this, having on the backside of this, it's kind of like cross-training. Like in the early days of UFC, it was like Royce Gracie would come in there and just choke everybody out. Then people learned how to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But then there was a time when all the strikers got really good, and then it really started to grow and make complete fighters. And so when you come here, you go to these different sessions, and I don't look what they're going to be on. I'm like, what am I going to learn now? And it's something, and it comes from very different perspectives, and it causes you to think about things differently. So it's just like when you change up your training physically, you get benefits from it. So I love that there's guys like me, they're going to come at this from a very spiritual, biblical perspective, and guys are thinking about it from a physical or financial. All those different pieces are challenging guys, and I found myself challenged in almost every one I went to. And after I got to teach after you two, and you guys were really intense, I was like, all right, I am taking the gloves off. I'm
Good.
going all in.
Good.
So it's been really good.
You know, I really like the term diversity because I'm taking it back and using it in my way. And on this panel, you could not see a more diverse group of men. Age, history and background, religion, all coming together for the sole purpose of one focus, and that is helping men improve, helping fathers improve, helping families improve. And our collective strength on even opposing views those who attend are able to pick and like, all right, I need this. I don't need that so much, but I need this. And like you said with UFC, the all-around fighter is the one who's going to win, not the one who's only leaning on one. When you get these different perspectives, and it's all like Anthony doesn't give us any rules. It's free to go. You made a point of that, and I'm glad you did. Nothing is off the table, and that's just, I mean, having you here has been a great addition to the team.
And it's not that it's relativism, like truth doesn't matter. It's that we're men, and we can argue and be friends and go have drinks and take stands, and it makes everyone, whatever their position is, it's going to be stronger at the end of it, because you're going to actually be challenged to think through it by guys that we're not here. It's not a pissing contest. It's men having real hard conversations about subjects that matter, and it's been good for that reason.
Yeah, making family strong again. George, the professional. I witnessed many of your speeches, saw many of your interviews. How was this convention? And was it any different than any of the last year's, I guess, the only one to compare it to?
Yeah, I think so. I noticed that the further along we go as an organization, now this is the second patriarch event, but even as an organization, the less reactive it is. We're just kind of leading the way, rather than, it's not like we're commenting on what happened in the past year. I don't care what happened in the past year. We are creating the agenda. You know, who was it that said, a woman says, well, what do you bring to the table? And the guy says, I am the table. You know, and it's like, this is not a panel. You look at panels, and it's like, well, what do you think of this event or this headline or like what this professor said? It's like, we are creating the agenda. This is not knee-jerk. This is a masculine group. Someone just said to me, reacting is very feminine, and responding is masculine. And we are responding to the world and initiating the conversation. I'm not answering a question. I'm the one who is literally creating the question, and we are initiating it, and we're kind of leading the way here. And I think it's even going to grow more than this. We really are going to be raising the bar. We are the bar.
I like that. So to that point, I'd like to go a little bit deeper. You know, you said we're responding, we're not reacting. You and I had a discussion about, we've got 3 months left of 2020, and 2020 has been a very interesting year. And you asked, well, how are you going to finish it? And one of my responses is it's the only way I can see we can finish it as men. You know, we decide how it is. We aren't going to be told, well, how is the election going to change, or the election doesn't matter. Well, Black Lives doesn't matter. The protest, that doesn't matter. What matters is what I choose to matter. What I decide matters. So how have you been filtering all the news coming in and not allowing it to hold you down or get you down?
I don't watch TV, that's the first thing. I don't have a television. Like, I read my news because when you read it, you read data free of emotion. I don't want to pick up on some reporter's psychological nuance when they're speaking. The dead air space, their silence, the raising and lowering of, you know, how they modulate their voice, which is manipulating the public. I read my news, number one. And I distanced myself. And when you kind of distance yourself from the propaganda, and there's a lot of propaganda. I believe nothing is random in 2020. Nothing is random. And I refused to be a chess piece. And what everyone was saying was very Jocko-ish, in the sense it was like that whole extreme responsibility thing. When I asked all you guys, and I still have a few guys to go, you know, how are you going to finish out this year? And, you know, we've had a lot of people make decisions for us. I can't go shopping unless I have a mask on. I got to do this. It's like, what? Like, I never had Big Brother intrude in my life in my 60 years as much as it did this year. I never had the government tell me what to do. Like, the government tells us what to do in some area, you know, like when we have to get taxes done. Tells me this is how fast you can drive. There was some serious ass overreach this year. telling me where I can go, where I can't go, what I have to wear, how far I have to be away from people. Use hand sanitizer, and it was just, and there's some people who don't see that and they are absorbing that and manifesting that stress in their bodies. And I see a lot of people stressed out from it, a lot of people. And I think guys who were men prior to this didn't absorb it as much as the guys who just believe everything they hear in the news. And it really, I think, exposed a lot of weakness in men, a lot. And strong men became conspiracy theorists, and strong men became, rebels. And I've never been so proud to be a conspiracy theorist and a rebel in my whole life. That's my answer.
That's excellent. And I like how you touched on the way our routines have been shaken up, because men with families, and especially kids who are still in the home, when the routine is mixed or messed with, it messes with them. How come all of a sudden we're not going to stores? Why is the news always angry? Well, why are you always turning it off? Why do we have to wear this piece of cloth on our face? And kids start to get worked up. So Ivan, how are you filtering, or how would you advise parents to filter all the negative information coming through the news and the media?
Every case is going to be individual, but there's some principles that I would recommend here. When you are attempting to filter the information, the news, the media, and propaganda, all of it, that comes into your children, your spouse, your loved ones, your family, do you have the ability to protect them physically from bad news? The Russians are coming. We'll pick an example. Can you stop them? If you cannot protect them, and you filter and conceal that from them, what are you doing to them? You're setting them up for disaster. Now, in between the spectrum of age appropriate, tell the 4-year-old the Russians are coming, all right? Can't do anything about that. And in between, as a parent, your job is not just to protect, it is to allow them to survive while they stretch their own envelope. Very important. You cannot stretch an envelope without risk and fear. Well, it's stretching and not just opening. So as a parent, you have a very fine and very difficult and very challenging line to walk between unfiltered truth and age appropriateness, and also reality. You must lead them. They must come away stronger, more competent, because of your protection. Your job is not to keep them safe. Your job is to keep them alive. And safety is their responsibility. On a gradient, obviously a 2-year-old is not responsible for their safety. But if they touch fire after they've been told twice, maybe the kid's dumb. Filter more. Real life is messy. But this is my view. Children must grow to be not just functioning adults. Functioning is what? Breathing? Paying taxes? Not getting arrested every other day? No. We have an entire generation of people who believe that functional and now is the idea, that's the goal. Look at our society. Degenerate, on fire, violent, full of hate, primed and desperate, finally to go to war with itself. What happens instead if you keep children alive while you let them determine how, when in life? How? Not everybody gets a trophy, no. Some people are shot on the field and left there to rot as a warning. That is the reality of life. I'm not going to tell a 4-year-old that. Again, age appropriateness. Right? Most of the time, in real life, things are not that intense. But as a parent, it's my job to see all the intensity that may happen and guide them to be a replacement for me who sees and leads, builds, does what I do. You have to find that very uncomfortable, awkward, scary place. And in practical terms, I can tell you what my parents did. They never filtered anything. I was allowed to read and watch anything I wanted. I was not allowed to harbor questions without asking them. So at a very, very young age, I was exposed to a lot of very significant material. Look at the Holocaust pictures when I was 6 or 7. What happened? What's the truth? People do bad things sometimes. 7-year-old can digest that. We give a 12-year-old a different explanation, maybe with more politics in it, explain how that happens, not that it does. You gotta find the space for the children, spouses, family. Maybe it's a parent who's trying to help understand things are not the way they used to be. You're not safe here anymore. I've always been safe here. Your neighborhood will be burned down next week, and your shop smashed. You gotta get their head around it. As a patriarch, your job is to get everybody there alive. Your job is to learn, make the learning survivable. And you've got the next generation covered. That's my take. But I don't do pity.
I love hearing you speak. You know, somebody told me that Ivan speaks epic, and honestly, it's an honor every time he delivers an answer because it's such a unique perspective. So keep that going. I want to toss this one a little your way, Mike Foster. Sure. So you have the most kids on this panel, and while you delivered an amazing spiritual speech to the men who attended Patriarchs, I want to bring a little more practical on how you're managing so many kids and your wife, and you're looking to build up yourself while the world is telling you to do the exact opposite almost 24/7. Where are you finding that energy? And I think there are a lot of other family men who are just feeling burnt out because the next day there's something else wrong and something else wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the old saying, men are like trucks. The more weight you put on them, the straighter they drive, right? So with those you step up to your responsibilities. I mean, the good things about kids is generally they come one at a time, right? And you're upping your level with it. So Em and I, we have a goal. Emily's my wife. We set out to do this. We used to joke while we were dating that we wanted a bus full of kids, which was a joke till I had to buy something like a bus to get all my kids in it. So got a big E350 to stick them all in there. But this has been the plan, and we've been preparing ourselves for this for a long time. I think in terms of what's happening in society, this is not new. There's civil wars, nations rise and fall. There's trouble like this all the time. And if you're raising your kids up, teaching them history, just walking them through the Bible, watching the fall of nations and rise of kings, letting them know this is normal. God has kept people through it before. He'll keep you through this. We got this. So our house isn't a bubble, it's a castle. It has a wall around it. It's our base of operations that we come out. So we let the kids know these things. And I think the main thing is that you have to have, your goals have to be like a bullseye with concentric circles. Right? The whole target matters, but the bullseye is the main thing, and each circle becomes more and more derivative as it goes out, as it emanates. And so sometimes when things are crazy, those outer circles just drop by the wayside, and you stay on the main thing, right? And so we're always talking about where are we at? Where are we at with these kids? How are we doing with our discipleship, our kids, with our family culture, coming back around to it. And so I think it's the mission that you have to continue to revisit and just really keeping tabs on where your individual kids are, because they're so different. They process. We had a Black Lives Matter protest come in front of our house, and one of my sons, he's like calling up the police. You know, the other son is looking for the gun. Right? So we have very different kids that have very different solutions. One's like, call the authorities. The other one's like, I am the authority. Right? It's like Judge Dredd or something. I am the law. But we're in it together. There's a reason a wife, a very capable wife, is a wonderful thing. Like we see, everyone talks about how awesome it is that women can be CEOs or whatever. But when you see a woman be a wife and a mother, you see the full capabilities of a woman, right? What they can do. She disciples my kids. She helps me. She was harassing me about, I told her, I said, you're nagging, but she was harassing me about getting registered to vote in Ohio because the vote actually matters. Unlike South Carolina, I was going to go Trump anyway, but not in Ohio. We don't know. So yeah, she's a talented woman. We're on the same page, and sometimes we focus on the main things and get to the other things as we can.
Excellent. And Tanner, so to continue on that theme, a lot of the men who attend these, they're exposed to us through social media, somebody's YouTube channel, Twitter. What have you seen as a key player in, I've been watching your Twitter and your feed and your Instagram it's like life is normal. You're still doing what you do. You're still training. How are you maintaining that? And what have you seen the manosphere? Have you seen any changes with the election rolling around? Is it all politics? Are the men going crazy, or is it, how is social media treating you with regards to what you're seeing as a wave of men?
Well, as far as our ability to maintain normalcy, we largely have. And part of that is that we've already been in a position where the changes that a lot of people experience as far as, maybe you work a white-collar job and rather than going to the office, you work from home. I already work from home. Maybe your kids can't go to school anymore, and so you have to deal with them being home all the time. We homeschool our kids. And so we always kind of joke in our neighborhood, and our friends have joked around about this, that everybody's now living the Guzzy lifestyle because we're the ones who are already doing this, and they're the ones who get to follow that. But one of the things that 2020 has been an awesome year for the Guzzy family. It's been a great year for us. And part of it is that we've been able to reframe what's been going on as rather than we're freaking out and we don't know how to handle this or anything, but it's allowed us to see blind spots that definitely existed, but we weren't aware of, and we're in a position where we can start to clear those blind spots. We've been able to take care of some things within our financial house or our preparatory house or the way that we're parenting our kids or things like that. And one of the reasons why my social media feed looks the way that it does, and you and I have talked about this, Zach and I wish that we were average. We really do. We want to normalize what we do as much as we possibly can. I would love nothing more than to be non-exceptional in the way that you and I live. That would be phenomenal. And the more that we can use social media as a tool to be able to demonstrate that, and the more we can attend events like this and you can meet people face to face and you can help them recognize that Zach actually walks the walk. Like, this is not some fake Pinterest level, totally perfected version that you see on Instagram or something, but this is the real deal, and I try to embody that as well. Then the more social media can be a tool to help people realize, yeah, the world is burning around, but I'm prepared for it, or I can be prepared for it because I can see how other people have been prepared for it. And so I'm very intentionally trying to capitalize on the time being what it is to strengthen my family, to develop myself more, to build my business, to improve my preparedness, to improve my community, and see all of the chaos that is 2020 as an opportunity rather than seeing it as a problem that we just have to hunker down and survive.
No, absolutely, and I completely agree. Tex, on that, recently you were talking, in your speech, you shared life lessons you would tell your younger self. We were talking about changes men could make. This aligns quite well with what's going on in the world. There's quite a bit happening, and men have an opportunity to rebuild themselves and, all right, here's where I started doing it right. What are you hoping men are taking from all of this? The election, Black Lives Matter, protests, Corona.
Start now.
We have 37 minutes, just so you know.
Oh,
Keep
right
it in that limit. There's quite a bit to that question, I understand. But what are the main takeaways you're hoping men are going to have?
It's start now, right? I started 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. I saw what was going on in Washington. I saw what was being done to the Trump administration. Good, bad, or ugly, you choose your side on politics, but there was a silent coup going on against the man, right? And I saw it happening. I started preparing my kids. And my kids are 30 and 36. So I started talking about what confirmation bias is, because they're adults, they should know that. I started talking to them about things that were happening in the media. So my point is not how I did it so good 2 years ago. Trust me, because it freaked them out a little bit. But as these things have started to come true, then all of a sudden they're thinking Dad's not so stupid after all, and he said, it really is not such a whack job conspiracy guy that we're starting to think he is, right? So we go through all of that, and we prepare them so that, like Ivan said, you don't filter anything. So when the things are going to come through, and again, they're adults, they're grown-ass adults. So this is what I see happening and try to protect my kids, but I got 3 grandsons, right? So I want to make sure that the people that are living with my grandsons understand what's going on as well, so they can prepare them and have that going. Try to be normal. We did everything we could this summer to be normal. We flew them down for a trip to the beach because that's what we do, right? Just because there's COVID and this, that, and the other, we flew them down. They took their precautions. They had the little mask on and all that, picked them up at the airport, and we had a couple of weeks at the beach because the kids needed normal. The kids have had everything so bizarre going on around them right now that a little bit of normal to latch onto is very comforting for them. So going forward, this isn't going to stop just because someone's going to get elected president eventually by the end of the year, hopefully. This isn't going to stop. We're in the middle of something bigger than just this. And my grandson was asking me about a book I was reading at the beach this summer. And he's like, what is that? And I said, well, it's a book that talks about how every 80 years a major world war happens. And it goes all the way back to 1450, War of the Roses. And he's 12 years old. He's like, what? How does that work? And we got discussion. And so he's like, what's going to happen now? We're in the middle of it, right? That's what we're trying to talk about. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. And he got this look on his face. And it was a look of consternation mixed with fear and anxiety. And I said, but don't worry, because we'll be okay. And he says, how do you know that? I said, because we make things right. We do the right things, and that we prepare for no matter what's going to happen. We don't worry about every single possibility that can happen. We prepare ourselves so that when something happens, we'll respond in the right way, and we'll do the right thing. And he got this nice, calmed look on his face again and just kind of smiled and went off and did some more stuff, right? But as kids do, in one ear and out the other a little bit. But he's going to remember that. When things get batshit crazy, I'm telling you, this is my not so humble opinion, this isn't going to stop. Expect this for another couple of years. I don't care who wins. The battle is not going to be over just because the election's over. So that's my biggest, I'm kind of going off into the whole conspiracy angle, but I'm just telling you, be prepared. And so what you can do right now as fathers, what you can do as men, is to start preparing your family right now for a longer siege than what you think it's going to be. This could go on for a couple of years.
Just found out who QAnon is. So there's a running theme here. Mike was talking about how the heavier the load, the straighter the truck. Tex was talking about being called a conspiracy theorist, and all of a sudden it's coming true. Phil, for the men who are leading families, the men watching this, the men in attendance, who they're listening, they want to make a change, but there's pushback, either from friends, maybe their wife, family. How do they stay the course, even though the whole world is saying you don't need ammo, you don't need to stock up on food, you don't need to worry about this or that? It's almost like they want them to get caught, flat-footed.
Yeah, so my advice on that right there is stealth. Don't worry about getting any kind of confirmation from someone else in your circle of your family, co-workers, friends, whatever. What you need to do is privatize your preparations. And that's what I've done with my family. When this whole silly virus thing started, I called my father. He doesn't live anywhere close to me. And I said, look, if this gets really bad, you and Mom need to get in the car and come home. Come to my house. I have everything in place. And I don't want any argument. That's just what you need to do. I called my mother-in-law. I said, if this gets really bad and ugly, which it could possibly well do so, you need to get in the car and come to my house. There is no discussion. On preparations and filtering and keeping the generalization of anybody giving me a hard time about what I've done, I don't care what anybody else does for their family. I care about what I do for my family first and foremost. So with not divulging too much and sounding too crazy, I've hardened my position in our home. Our food stores are well up. We have plenty of ammunition. We filter all of the social media that my child is able to view, and it's limited heavily, but we filter for any kind of political information, I guess you would call it, that would come through, and balance that out with zero TV like Mr. Bruno. We don't watch TV, we don't watch news, and I go as another step is I don't even read the news. So the only information news-wise I get is from my general peers, and it's been filtered through them.
And you're getting plenty from us.
Oh yeah, when it comes to text, I'm getting some info. But so I think as far as filtration goes, I really don't worry too much about what the next guy is doing. I'm more focused on how I can protect my family long term. And I'm in the same boat with text. I don't think this is going to go away anytime soon. I think that you need to continually, when you think you have things squared away all the way, keep going. You need more. And as far as security goes, you need to definitely keep your family, especially your women and children, out of compromising situations. Compromising situations could mean, hey, for a while, you kids and the wife, I'll just go ahead and run to the grocery store because you don't know what's going to pop off at the silly grocery store. Hey, babe, let me go fill your car up with gas. You don't need to run up to the gas station. I saw on Twitter yesterday where I live, really close to where I live, some guy getting knocked down in the parking lot. You just never know where this thing is going to start up. And like Ivan was alluding to, I mean, these people, they're burning. They're bashing businesses. They're burning homes. So not to go too doom and gloom on everyone, I think that you need to be conservative and make a serious effort to look at every angle possible of weakness that can compromise your family and yourself.
One quick point. At the end of every one of those 80 years cycle events, there is an era of good times that come after. And if you saw Stefan Arnio's speech last year at 21Con, he touched on this for a little bit. There's a good times coming. We just have to get through what's going on right now.
And we get to make them.
Absolutely.
We get through the hard times the right way, we get to make the good times.
I might add something, huh? Hard times and good times come and go, they do. Right now, this very moment in time, there is more wealth, more information, more opportunity, more vacuums of power, more vaults of heaven open with gold showered out. Long buried wealth is now bursting open. Everything is blowing apart and being remade. What an glorious time to be alive. Why would I want to live in any other time? The entire world is spread and begging for new rulers. They will arise. I guarantee you that. Well, learn to look. Teach your children to look, to recognize. Those men will crash and die and take everyone with them. Watch. That's pretty unfiltered, but that's what they need to know. If they want to make it to the good times, maybe even run the good times. There always will be men who wish to become Caesar. There's no shortage of it. There never will be. And right now, one of the things that I see happening is that so many who, they believe they can be the next Caesar if they just put off are thinking, now's my chance. And that alone, enough of them, blows things apart. Whether it's a marriage, a company, nation, or culture. Look at our culture now. Is it tearing itself apart or not? Are they struggling for who will rule? Of course. Are the narratives competing and clashing and irreconcilable? That's how it works and how you know. I can pick my phone out and within seconds I can move all the wealth in the world or find out anything in the world I need instantaneously, and I can reach the globe in seconds. Your mileage may vary, right? You're on Twitter, I'm not anymore, that threw me off. But my point is, right now, oh my God, I get to be alive now? Holy crap. Imagine when Alexander with Caesar would do if you sat them down and said, okay, you're here right now. You can actually set the entire world on fire, push a button, and blow up a continent. There's never been a better time to be alive. And that, my friend, is the real good times. On top of everything that happens, all you have to do is live. That's what we teach them. That's the job of the patriarch. Not just me, because it's not selfish to a patriarch. My line, my legacy, the lineage that I inherited must live. Do it. Have fun, man. It's not going to get better than this.
There's a truth to that. And actually, to Tanner's points, he was talking about how the Guzzies have had a great year. I have peers that are struggling and in constant complaint, and I can't help but not be able to relate whatsoever, because in my world, it's been great. I dropped a pen name. I created more things this year than I've ever created, and I've had a great time doing it. I came out into the world, I had a blast, and it's 2020. I'm looking back on 2020 as the year I taught my kids to swim and ride a bike. I'm looking back on 2020, the year I dropped the pen name and had a blast with my FOE men and went to Patriarchs, got to see Tanner kill it again, see him and his bride have their Q&A and do these great things. I'm like, families are coming together, families are being represented, and in my world, 2020 is awesome. And there's nothing stopping you or any of you from saying the same. You dictate your reality. And sometimes I feel like I'm crazy. Like I'm the crazy guy with like so much going on, but I'm like, I'm having a good time. I'm fully aware of what's going on, but that doesn't influence me because I'm not reacting.
But again, that's the power of an event like this and an organization like this, is that you aren't the only weirdo who's concerned about this stuff and the earnestness, nor are you the only person who's capable of thriving in circumstances like this. And none of us are able to thrive. My wife and I were looking at one of the pictures that I took with some of the guys here, and I think about the fact that the amount of money that I have brought in from these guys that I took a photo with was more than a year's worth of my salary at the job that I worked when we first got married. Like, I'm not doing this on my own. It's because of the network of people that are in here, the attendees, the speakers. And if we're not capitalizing on that, if you're not capitalizing on that, you're missing out on all the potential that can come, and you won't have the opportunities to make these be the good times like Ivan is saying they can be.
Absolutely. And George, through the videos you've been making, I've seen you taking on a broad angle of you're talking about what you want to talk about. You've not allowed anybody to force you into this mold of you're going to talk about what's popular and react. How have you seen a change in the responses you've been getting? Have you brought normalcy to the lives of others and they're starting to wake up to it? Or is it a large base still trying to figure out what's going to happen at the end of this year?
What I've discovered with my channel, which is the majority of my income comes from my channel, my social media, that the people that needed to drop off have dropped off, and the true fans have stayed around. And I went from I guess I can call it, I'm a lifestyle channel on YouTube, because I will do interviews with guys, interviews with women, talk about treasure hunting, metal detecting, New York fashion models, prize fighters, theologians, just like, it's so random, and it's kind of like cross-training for me in a sense. And it's also teaching my audience that they can appreciate so many different things in life, and that the people who have suffered from a crystallization, calcification of attitudes have kind of disappeared and stopped hassling me. And I feel really good about that. And I just feel a lot freer. And this was the year that it happened for me, was that I kind of broke free from what was expected of me. And like, I'm in the driver's seat now with my content. And that's probably the biggest thing for me.
You know, I love listening to your content as well as your brother's, like on drives or workouts, and I never knew I was interested in fountain pens until you introduced me to the world of fountain pens. And I was like, oh man, I'm all about it. Like, fountain pens are awesome. So it's one of those things, like, there's so much going on in the world, but people are so caught up in looking at what's popular and hot and going to trigger, and not, well, what's interesting to me, and what do I enjoy, and what can actually bring peace to my life. It's too much of a focus on the macro, and they're not enjoying the micro joyous moments they could otherwise have.
You know, circling back around to kind of the broader conversation we're having here, what I like about patriarchs is that the unrest that's coming, that seems inevitable at this point, the greater unrest, is not something that an individual can face down, right? It's going to take a community, and it's going to take knowing your neighbors, and that's society is a collection of households, right? That's how you get society. So we're calling men to step up, to build up their household, to strengthen it. And then the next step is to get more connected to other households and to build something for if things break apart and go some crazy direction, there's little towns or like these little city states that we could start to build where there are people that share these same values and commitments. You know, early America was fairly diverse, right? But it still had a core that it shared. So a big part of what's happening here is not just men are improving themselves, but they're stepping up as leaders of their households, but also as leaders of a community, of households working together. And I think that is where we have to go. If we're gonna, you can't take down a mob all by yourself. Maybe you can take down the first one, but bullets run out, and it takes people working together.
It's interesting. So that's also been another theme I've seen in patriarchs. Is it starts with you, the man who's attended. You know, you start to improve yourself and change, and you start to look at, well, why aren't the kids? You know, I'm getting some pushback possibly from my wife. Well, they don't have a panel in their pocket. They don't have the patriarchs. They now have 22con, but they don't have all these tools you've been afforded. But here's the thing. You're being afforded these tools, and you're incumbent to take all this knowledge and pass that to your children, pass that to your spouse, pass that to your friends. You've got all the tools, and you can start passing them around. And that was a theme of yours, is the responsibility of man to find that intensity again. You know, and it's when it starts with the man, for the men listening, what does that mean? And how do they start if they're looking to find that fire again?
Yeah, that's a fundamental issue, I believe, in this day and age with the American male, is they lack intensity. And finding that intensity is finding your passion. It's kind of like when you see Zach or Tanner or Tex or Ivan or any of these gentlemen speak up on stage, and they really get going, and it really starts flowing, and they get intense, and they get wound up, and you can hear it, and it's starting to really come from their heart. That's that passion. The passion is what fuels your intensity. And as a man, in this day and age, you have to have that passion. You have to have that drive within you, whatever that may be, whether it's being the best father in the world, the best husband in the world, being the best bodybuilder in the world, being the best communicator in the world, whatever that might be, you need to find that passion and home in on it and incrementally build it. And once that intensity starts to build within you, it becomes something so like nebulous, something so powerful that it's contagious. And as that intensity builds, you share it with other men, and then they feed off of that intensity. And it just keeps going and going and going. Before you know it, we're all on fire.
A bonfire can come from a match. All right, we're going to open up the Q&A. So if you have a question, if you want to address an individual panel member, or if you just want to ask a broad question, the microphone is back there in the middle aisle. If not, we're just going to keep riffing. So when it comes to lighting yourself on fire, getting yourself motivated, how do you find yourself, you know, Tana, let's toss this to you, with the kids, the wife, where's your motivation coming from? And is it self? Is it driven externally? Is there a mantra?
It comes from a couple different sources for me. One has to do with the fact that I recognize that it's my responsibility to be aspirational in my role as a father. And if I have any right to expect anything of my kids, then I need to live up to what it is that I'm expecting of them. If not, I'm a hypocrite, and that hypocrisy is, I have no business being a hypocrite in that regard. And then another one really has to do with my relationship with God and what my eternal potential is, because I also have no business burying my full potential because I'm falsely modest, or because I am afraid of the work, or I'm too complacent, or I'm too anything else. And so I've got pressure both coming from below with my children, laterally from my spouse, and from above from my relationship with God. And from all these directions, there's this pressure to just be better. And as soon as I stopped resisting it, as soon as I started to embrace that, you realize that that kind of pressure is a phenomenal thing. And the happiness that so many of us seek, and we seek it by trying to dive back into ourselves and seeking pleasure or anything else, pales in comparison with the happiness and the true joy that comes from living up to all of that pressure that comes from all of these different sources.
When these men come together, when the patriarchs all come together inside the convention, you can't help but just feel like what you once thought was holding you back or potentially an anchor is actually your fuel. You know, we had that discussion where there's no way I would be at the tempo I'm at or have the achievements I had if I didn't have kids. And that sounds kind of counter, because it's like, oh, you don't have to worry about time and energy, but that's my fuel.
Absolutely.
And it looks like we have several questions, so go ahead.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, gentlemen. Fantastic time this weekend. I want to touch on something. Most of the talks at Patriarch have been what I call intra-family, how a man leads his wife and kids, that dynamic. I was wondering if you could talk about inter-family dynamics so you can build that community with other like-minded families.
I'll speak to that a little bit from my perspective. One of the things that's beneficial is being around families that are in similar positions, and we're lucky, we're blessed to be in a position where that's the case. But you also can't rest on your laurels if that's the case. It requires going out of your way to go out on couples dates with other couples, or when your kids' friends come around. Here's a really small and simple example. Whenever my kids bring new friends over, because there's 300 kids that live within the quarter mile of where our house is, because there's that many young families, and it's wonderful. So there's always new kids that come over. And when they first address me or my wife, they'll just say, hey, or Locke's dad or something, and it's just, no, I'm Mr. Guzzy, or she'll say, I'm Mrs. Guzzy. And it sets that kind of expectation of respect and something else. And we found that even just with that tiny little thing, that it changes the way that they treat us, and they spend more time wanting to be around us because there's boundaries in our home, and they're not dictatorial, but there's boundaries that are comfortable. Or we've communicated with other families where we know that our kids spend a lot of time over there, and we'll say, whatever you need to do, if our kids break your rules, tell them. By all means, we give you full permission because we trust you that you're not going to be physically or emotionally abusive or anything else like that. So if you need to discipline our kids, do it. And the parents will always say, and please do the same for us. And if it gets to the point where it escalates and we need to communicate with each other, it does. But then what it does is, from that inter-family sense, from that broader sense, it helps the kids and the families recognize that, one, our parents communicate with each other and they trust each other, that they depend on each other, and that, two, these morals that I'm being taught, these patterns of behavior, are not just unique to my family, but this is how I interact with society and culture in general. And so we get to reinforce those attitudes and behaviors within our entire culture, within our entire neighborhood. So that's how our relationship with it is.
That's excellent. All right, next question.
Hi guys, thanks a lot for everything you had to share. Tex, I'm wondering if you could pass along a thank you to Ivan for me, and tell him thank you for highlighting what an exceptional time it is to be alive. This is a phenomenal opportunity for all of us as men, if we choose to see it that way, and for those of us who do choose to see it that way, the potential is limitless. So I just wanted to thank Ivan for saying that. And a question for the group. I'm part of Alexander Cortez's Telegram channel, and over the past few months, that channel has become very personally meaningful to me because it's a community, I call it an anti-fear community. It's a community full of men who are growing stronger amidst these challenges. And I discovered in that time how important it is to be part of communities of men that are working to grow stronger and cultivating anti-fear communities. So I wonder if you could each speak to what this particular community, the 21 Convention community, the Manosphere, has meant to you personally and your families during the past few months.
So I gave my first speech at 21Con in 2017, and I felt, I didn't know how I was going to be received. I'm a family man who talks about my family, entering the red pill world, and I'm married. So I was like, all right, whatever, let's do this. Shoulders back, unapologetic, let's go. And I got a standing ovation at the end of my speech. 21Con is not about a segment of men. It's about men. It's about helping men and bringing men together. And that's only grown over the years. We have a patriarchs edition now. This is a patriarchs panel. We're talking about family men. Prior to this, the first Red Man group was the all men. And it wasn't focused so much on families, it's focused just on all the issues men face, your mind, your body, your spirit as a man. We have 22Con now, making women great again. We're going to speak to women and their roles and how this all is going to work for them coming up in the modern world. 21Con is hitting every angle of what it is to be a man, and that in itself is building our little families. And I think I speak for everyone when we see the guys come back year after year and they're improving, they've lost weight, they've gained muscle, they're dressing better. There's no greater feeling in the world to know change is occurring. Things are growing. Having your network, the three of us are in the fraternity of excellence. Men should have a network they're involved in. Your AJ's Telegram group, that's excellent. You should be working with men. You know, that's absolutely a healthy thing. And 21Con is embodying all that. It's only growing. It's learning each year how to do it better and better. I mean, look at the hats. They're trying to find every box to ensure nobody's left behind. I love that about 21Con.
Yeah, I'm watching the Christian community interact with the manosphere, and it's not been deep dives, sadly. So some of the articles are like, the manosphere is coming to an end, and it was just for like the last 2 years, or whatever. They didn't really know what they're talking about. But the reality is that men, we are pack animals, right? Or animals, pack creatures, right? We always are going to find a gang people to run with. And there's guys out there that are looking for help, and they're finding their community. And it's good that things like this exist to build people up. And I would encourage everybody, Telegram's great, YouTube's awesome, obviously that's here, but to go local as soon as they can to find people, because you need, when you do these consultation or coaching calls, someone calls you, and I always tell them, if you lie to me, everything I tell you is worthless. Right? They'll say, oh, this is what's going on with my wife and my marriage. Like, if you're not giving this to me honest, all my advice is not going to be very helpful to you. And one of the things I really enjoy about this, and I'm pretty new to this world, has been, I wouldn't call it a brutal honesty. It's not brutal. People are just honest, and they lay it out there. And they're talking about where they want to change, where they're making mistakes. Well, you need people that can also call you on it in your everyday life, that they see how you interact with your kids and interact with your wife, because sometimes you're just unaware and you need someone to say, hey, why do you always take that kid with you to the store, not the other kid? Or do you know that you cut your wife off, you don't let her talk? You need people that do little things like that. And so let the benefit of this inspire you to get more of the intense thing, the thing locally,
I tell you what, I can't believe they let me keep coming back here. I'm having so much fun. I mean, really. But
here you are.
I am sitting up here. I'm friends with Ivan Throne. I'm friends with all of these guys. Michael's a new friend, but the other 6 of us sitting here, these guys have been my friends for a couple of years now. There's guys in this audience that are like seriously good friends of mine, right? My friends at home suck because I don't reach out to them. Probably it's partly me, and I'm busy and all that. But I'm saying, these guys are all friends, and these are the guys I want to go to war with if I have to go to battle. 21, I could have paid you to ask that question back there. 21 means the world to me. Absolutely means the world to me, because we're making a difference. Talking to guys in the hallway, creating new friendships there, listening to what they have done over the last year, knowing that the men here, there, everywhere, coming together, have inspired each other to get better. And that's what it's all about. So.
All right, next question.
Integrity. Doing the right thing when you can get away with doing the wrong thing. It's a value that I plan on instilling into my children. I'm about to be a father. I just want to get literally just one value or principle and how you define it from each and every one of you that you have taught to your children and you hold true to your hearts, and no copying each other.
From each of us?
Yep, each and every one of you.
All right, George,
Thank you.
Start with you.
Consistency, just literally, even if it's just a text once a week, like I talked about in my speech. I love you and believe in you. And you do that regularly enough. Let's say once a week. Let's say every Thursday morning you send to your kids, I love you and I believe in you. The week that you don't do it, they're going to be like, what happened to Dad? He's usually sending me that text. Just little things like that. Consistency.
Obedience. So God is my Father. He calls me to obey him. I do it out of because I love him. And I would say the way you define obedience is all the way, right away, and with a happy heart. It's what I expect from my kids because it's what God calls or expects from me.
I'm going to say faith, and most of you are going to hear that within a religious context, and that's certainly the framework with which I operate, but it's more than that. And faith is a loyalty. It's kind of like integrity. It's a loyalty to a set of principles or morals that you may not understand, or you may not know if it's going to work out, but you choose to be loyal to that anyway. And faith is when growth happens, when you choose to operate on the belief that this black area, this sense of darkness, that I don't know what's going to come from this, but I'm going to move forward anyway, and you're loyal to what it is that you think can get you to the other side. That kind of faith is where real growth and real development comes from.
I'm going to say love. And we're at the 21 Con, talking about masculinity, red pill truths. I'm going to say love. Not something I ever thought I'd say in this stage, but that, to me, is what drives all I do. I love my wife. I love my children. I love myself. I love my fellow man. I want to see them win. I love all the women looking to build themselves up. I love all the mothers taking care of their kids. So when I instill love in my children, I want them to feel the same. I want them to find that same passion, that same purpose in life, because you can't be down, you can't be depressed, and you can't quit if you have things that you love that you don't want to let down.
Yeah, the integrity is talked about heavily in my home, and it's a belief in yourself. I tell my daughter all the time, even when no one's looking, and we work together through things, and I tell her, hey, it's like teamwork through excellence. Excellence. You carry my last name. You represent our family. You need to operate from a position of integrity. She's a teen girl, and that's not easy to do in this day and age. But excellence.
I guess for me it would be truth. Truth is the fundamental thing that I want him as my son to recognize in this world and to espouse, to approach everything with the truth in mind, because I think that's the one thing that, well, there's many things, but that's the one thing that is no longer revered in the society. Truth. And it's you know it when you see it. It's what you do, like I said, when no one's looking. But you tell the truth, you stand by the truth, and if you have to, you die for the truth.
I go back a long way to think about the most important lesson that I got from my family. It really boils down to an experience some of you know about, most of you have read. It's true, as Texas pointed out. The world doesn't care. No one is coming to save you. Get up and walk. Teach your children that. They understand that. Everything they do is imbued with adulthood. It's a very adult thing to say to a 4-year-old, but it's incontrovertibly true. No one is coming to save you. Patriarchs do not expect to be saved. They know that mercy is not the currency of the world. Get up and walk. Get there. When you do that, everything flowers open. All the joy, all the pleasure, friendship, brotherhood, love, wealth, all of it. You have to walk, you have to get up. It doesn't come to you because you weep. It comes to those who build and protect, sacrifice, die for it, so that the next generation lives and has their own chance to get up and walk. There is nothing to me more powerful than that. And at the end of any devastation, a celebration the next morning perhaps, get up and walk. Go into it. Live your life. The men here teach principles. We're all a little different. Our messages are all the same. You are responsible. Trust us. It's really good being responsible for your life and your family. Really good. It's an honor to be here with all of you. Thank you.
We have time for one last question.
Yeah, as a man, as a father, this conference is amazing. You talk about legacy and masculinity and all those things that the world at large would rather have us not talk about. However, as a father of 2 daughters, I was wondering what are some things for us men who are fathers of daughters could pass along to their daughters to carry them through life.
Future Chief Patriarch. Lead this off. And then the future chief.
Daughters are not defective sons, and they shouldn't be treated as such. They should not be made to believe that their role is to compete with their brothers or compete with the boys in their lives, or that there's something wrong with them because they don't want to, or because they may fall for the fact that they've been convinced that they need to. Daughters require a very special nurturing to be able to embrace what it is to be a daughter and then what it is to be a woman. And most of that will come from their mother, just like for sons, most of it does come from us as their fathers. But it's our job to celebrate, to reinforce, to love, to appreciate, to engender, to do as much as we can to foster that budding femininity in them, and do it in a way that isn't just limited to their value to us as fathers or their value to their future husbands, but their own inherent value in what it is to be a girl and what it is to be a woman. And there's something very special about that when that comes from dad instead of coming just from mom.
Yeah, that's a solid question. I have a teen daughter myself, and a lot of the times I just remember as she has grown up into the young woman that she's become, that she is a direct reflection of me, even though she's a little lady. She reflects the love that I've given her back onto me and everybody around her by showing grace and dignity. And I believe that if you do have young girls in your life and you're a father, especially if you're a single father, and I know if you're a divorcee like I was, that happens. Sometimes you have to play both roles of mom and dad, and that can be difficult at times. And in those times of difficulty, you need to express to them, kind of like what Tanner was saying, that they aren't faulty boys, but they are true gifts. What an opportunity to be able to raise a young woman in this day and age in an appropriate fashion to show her that it's okay to be different. And I tell mine all the time, to be the best in all you do, you have to be different than everyone else, and it's okay. That would be my advice.
So we've run out of time. I'm going to leave you with this. Your son may be your heir, but that does not make your daughter a spare. Don't ever let that enter your mind. Now, this concludes the Red Man Group Patriarchs panel. Fatherhood's coming back strong, and fatherhood is thriving in 2020. So if you enjoy what the panelists had, we'll go around, talk about where you can find them, more of their work if you want to reach out. So starting with George, where can people find you if they want to know more or get in contact with you?
Yeah, probably the most active place would be my YouTube channel, which is my name, George Bruno. There's something there for everybody.
Michael?
You can find me on Twitter at This Is Foster, and I have a website called itsgoodtobeaman.com.
For me, for fatherhood stuff, Twitter and Instagram are the best. It's Tanner Guzzi, TANNERGUZY.
Ivan, where can people find Phil?
They come from, you got to write down since I can't hurry up.
There's one question. Where can people find you if they want to reach out?
Passing goal notes the whole time.
You can find me on Twitter at EvolvedPhil, at EvolvedPhil.
Tex, people looking to touch base.
Yeah, so I fell off the old note-keeping thing over here.
One job.
So absorbed in the...
Why do they keep inviting you back? You had one job.
Only had one job.
Way to go, Tex.
Only had
Way
one
to
job. TexasDom.com, TEXASDOM.com is where I post my writings and news and that sort of thing. And then I'm on Twitter way too much at TexasDom1 that's the numeral 1. And that's how you would find me the most easily, or you join the Fraternity of Excellence and you'd hang out with me every day.
IvanThrone.com. That's where you found me. And it's that easy, so you should do it today.
All right, my name is Zachary Small. It's a pleasure to host these gentlemen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ZachSmall_, or my writing at thefamilyalpha.com, my brotherhood at fraternityofexcellence.com. Thank you for your time.
He represents is patriarchy. We're here to do work as men, as patriarchs.
There's nothing more natural than being a father.